stand by. Oh my God, I feel like I'm going to throw up, you guys. So I should make this open remarks before all the comments, I think. Yeah, I need to.
I think so.
Yep.
Because we have a couple of things before the community comment anyway.
Yep, I just need to dig right in.
So, does this public hearing come first?
Hi, Kim. Thank you. Public hearing comes first?
Public hearing goes first.
Okay. You kick us off with the public hearing.
Sign in.
No, if I just keep chugging away, how about you?
Yep, you're good.
I tell you, the flu, I think I normally...
Good evening. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2018 City High School gym wall repair project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on January 23rd, 2018. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on January 24th, 2018. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. February 15th, 2018 at the ICCSD physical plant located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide planned rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on January 24th, 2018. Are there any questions from the board?
With this wall repair project and what's being advocated in the discussions at City High with the renovations and everything, this isn't a wall we're going to fix and tear out 6 months later?
No, you may recall last fall we brought you bids for this project. I thought they were a little high, so we took it back and redesigned it. This is the upper walls of the old gym, and with this or with the new renovation project, it should remain unaffected after we do it. So it's a plus.
But it's not anything into what's being
Will be
proposed
changed.
so far?
No, sir.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the public? You'll consider this public hearing closed.
Thank you. I will call this Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, February 13th, 2018 to order. My name is Janet Godwin, and I want to thank those in the audience, those watching on television, and those keeping track via Twitter. I'll start by introducing those at the table with me. To my right, we have directors Ruthina Malone, Phil Hemingway, Lori Rotland, J.P. Clausen, Shina Eystone, Paul Ressler, and recording secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. Before we move into the agenda, I do have some remarks that I'd like to make to start the session this evening. Many of you know and are here tonight because of it, that the opening proposal from the board to SEIU was a mistake. No other way to put it. As board president, I take responsibility for not ensuring there was a robust process in place to develop, review, and gain alignment on the opening proposal before it was shared with our union negotiators. I understand that the opening proposal caused significant anger, fear, anxiety, and concern for our district workers' well-being, and for that, I deeply and sincerely apologize. I also understand that the opening proposal broke faith and significantly strained relationships with those groups that we have had a solid working relationship in the past. Our goal, as we try to correct this mistake, is to begin rebuilding trust and shoring up relationships through the following actions. We published a statement Saturday night noting that our intention was not to remove permissive items from the contract. We hope, as a first step, that began to relieve some of the most significant anxiety and concern. We called and held a special exempt session right before this board meeting to discuss how to course correct and get the negotiations back on the proper track. We agreed in that session on some changes in our negotiating process and look forward to the next round of negotiations where we hope to reboot. With these steps in place, I hope we can move forward together to ensure that the best supports are in place in contracts for all of the hardworking people that support our students in so many ways every single day. As a board, please know we are committed to that. One last remark I'll make. We are a new board. We are learning together. We're learning to work with the administrative team, we're learning to work with the community, and we're learning to work with our union partners. Please know that as we develop muscle for this work, and as we occasionally stumble, our collective hearts and minds are committed to best serving our students and all of you who tirelessly support and help our students succeed. Our goal is to listen to you, our goal is to understand your needs, and our goal is to do the level best as we can to make this district the best in the state of Iowa. So with that, we will turn to our agenda for the evening, and first up is student representative updates. Do we have City High present? Right up here.
Okay, good evening. I'm here representing City High in place of Tegan because he is sick. But City High has had a very exciting weekend. Our show choir team, Charisma, won grand champions at the North Polk competition in Des Moines. During the state swim meet, City High finished 7th, higher than any other MVC school at the meet, and Forrest Frazier won second 2 state titles, named the meet's most outstanding swimmer. Wrestling also won an MVC championship and districts and are off to the state tournament. And finally, girls basketball finished the season 20-0 and is currently the #1 team in Iowa and is preparing for their own state tournament. Oh, we'd also, later this month, there will be a self-defense class offered to students, a student-initiated class. Mr. Bacon would also like to note that this year has been relatively disruptionless school year. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you. Up next, West High. And following West High, we'll have Liberty High.
Hi, everyone. So we would like to start by saying that West High Student Senate supports the secretaries in the district and appreciates the great work they do on a daily basis. So to begin our updates, the amazing West High Dance Marathon raised over $40,000 for the University of Iowa Stead Family Hospital, completing another year of raising money and awareness for life-threatening childhood diseases. The program also featured several speakers from cancer survivors and parents of children who have succumbed to childhood diseases. The Good Time Show Company was named second runner-up at the River City Show Choir Contest in Muscatine on Saturday. The Good Time Company was the highest-placing Iowa show choir at the competition. So in terms of our debate team, Pranav Krishnamurthy was ranked 21st speaker, and Ethan Trepka was ranked 9th speaker out of a pool of 106 of the nation's finest debaters. To celebrate MLK Day in January, West High held a special day of classes in which the students, teachers, and members of the community structured lessons on the theme of multiculturalism, service to the community, civil rights, and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So 10 out of the 70 candidates selected from Iowa for the Presidential Scholar Award were from West High. The candidates are Quinn Baker, Colleen Bloser, Jingyi Du, Iman El Sheikh, Lauren Ernst, Alex Granner, Kevin Liu, Yangshen Shengwan, Wenjel Zhu, and Lin Zhu. West High placed second in the I'll Make Me a World Conference Black History Competition. And West Side Story, the West High newspaper, received the SNO Distinguished Site for the second year in a row, becoming the first school in Iowa to receive this award and the third school in the nation to receive this award. Iowa City West robotics team scored big at regionals. They competed in the regional competition at Davenport and was a member of the Finalist Alliance and also a finalist for the Think Award. And for our last piece of big news, West High has been invited to participate in the Global Nomads program called A Conversation About Race. As a part of this, a panel of 5 students from West will participate in a live conversation about race with students from New York and Cape Town, South Africa. This event will be a part of West's continuous efforts this year to create awareness about race and diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liberty High, and following Liberty, we have Tate. Do we have student from Liberty? No? Or Tate High? Okay, we will move into the community, ICEA update.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Gross, co-president of ICEA.
Brady Shutt, co-president of ICEA.
I will apologize after I read this statement. I have a council meeting that I've got to get to, but we would like to speak on a couple of things. 1 year ago today, on Monday, February 13th, 2017, the Iowa City School Board convened a special session for the purpose of ratifying the negotiated agreements for its 5 union-based employee groups. The agreements that were approved were the result of a focused and intense negotiations process that was literally a race against the clock as we all watched events unfold at the State House in Des Moines. In each case, the motion to approve the agreements passed unanimously. February 14th, the next day, at its regularly scheduled meeting with a unanimous vote, the Iowa City School Board passed a resolution urging the Iowa legislature to preserve the collective bargaining rights found in Chapter 20 of the Iowa Code. In spite of that urging, and in the face of massive demonstrations, the legislature gutted Chapter 20 of the Iowa Code with a bill signed by then-Governor Terry Branstad. This legislation ushered in an era of uncertainty and anxiety for the public employees and their allies, like those who are here tonight. Our district is full of men and women who on a daily basis come together and work hard on behalf of the families and children of our community. Our secretaries, food service workers, custodians, maintenance workers, and groundskeepers rarely get the credit they deserve. Without them, our district would not have the quality schools that it does.
So it's against that backdrop that we want to express our sincere thanks to the board for your decision tonight to keep permissive topics in the negotiated agreement for our employees. Bargaining permissive topics has been part of a successful labor management model that has had success for over 40 years. We look forward to that continuing in the years to come. We acknowledge that the state legislature's gutting of Chapter 20 does require us to change how and where we address some topics previously found in negotiated agreements by making them prohibited or excluded topics. Those prohibited topics require all of us in the room to come together to build on the work that has been done by countless others to make the Iowa City Schools what it is today. Your actions tonight demonstrate your commitment to the staff and students of the Iowa City Schools. Your actions will help us move forward with more trust and a common purpose. And your actions tonight will be a shining example for school districts across our state on how to treat their employees. We would also like to express our profound thanks to all of our supporters and friends who are here with us tonight. In the face of continued attacks by the Republican-controlled state legislature, including today with their voucher plan, we are truly fortunate to have a community of passionate, intelligent, and dedicated advocates for public schools and for our students. So thank you.
Thank you, Brady and Mitch. Now we'll move into the community comment section. And we've got a number of students here tonight. One group that we'd like to have go first is going to be talking about no school on Eid. And there's a number of students, I think, who are going to come up together to talk to that topic.
Good evening, everyone. We would like to start off by thanking the board members for their quick response to our email and for giving us the opportunity to talk to you all today. Thank you to the audience also for coming out and supporting us in this cold weather. I'm Rayan Saeed, a 6th grader from Weber Elementary School. We are here tonight to discuss the topic of Eid and Muslims. In Islam, there are 2 holidays. Eid al-Fitr, which is a holiday after Eid al-Fitr, which is a holiday after Ramadan, and it is a day for us to celebrate our hard work. And also Eid al-Adha, which is a holiday for sacrifice. We think that there should be no school on Eid because of many reasons. First of all, there are 14,056 students in the ICCSD, and a good portion of them are Muslims. The Muslim community is getting bigger here in Iowa City, so it will benefit many people. This won't only benefit Muslims, it will also benefit kids from other religions. It will help them learn about different religions and cultures.
I am Noor Saad, a 6th grader from Horn Elementary. Another reason is we would like our non-Muslim friends to celebrate with us and have fun with us. This will help them communicate with Muslims and not be afraid to make friends with them. This way, our community will become closer together and use our differences to enrich connections. Some people don't want to miss out on the school day, but they also don't want to miss out on Eid, so they have to choose one, and it is a very hard decision.
I am Nana Ahmed, a 7th grader from Northwest Junior High. Some parents want their children to have a perfect attendance record, so they have to go to school on Eid and don't want to spend time with their families. We go based off of a lunar calendar, so it won't always fall on the same day. In fact, next year both Eid will be during summer break. It will only be fair to have a break from school or some sort of recognition, because there are so many other holidays to have a break, and not even one of them is a Muslim holiday.
And I am Reen Kurja, a 5th grader from Weber Elementary School. Eid is very important to us, just like how holidays such as Christmas are important to others. It is not just us who think this is a good idea. There are many other people here who agree with us. This community should be an equal community, but we Muslims don't feel like we have all of our equal rights. We should be free to celebrate our holidays without the stress of school. May the people who agree with us please raise their hands. Thank you. As you can see, there are quite a lot of people who agree with this message. We would also like to say that for this opportunity, we would like to give the board a gift.
Thank you very much.
Are you sure the gift?
Of course. That's wonderful. Thank you. Muslims, Iowan, and American. Thank you. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. Are there others, please?
Hi, my name is Assam. I'm from Borlag Elementary. I'm a 4th grader there. I think we should have no school on Muslim holidays. We get days off of school on Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, and Hanukkah. We're humans too. We have holidays. In normal schools, we get 2 weeks off of school for Christmas and New Year's. We're not asking for that. We're only asking for 2 days. It's not fair if we get days off from other holidays, but not Muslim ones. The Muslim holidays can help the other people know more about Islam. In school, we have a state research project. I got New York State. New York schools have Muslim holidays. When I was 6, I supported the Muslim community in Iowa City Hall with a sign that said, "I am Muslim and I am proud." And I still am proud.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mohammad. I'm a 4th grader at Shimmick Elementary Here is why I think we should have Eid off. Many students enrolled in the Iowa City Community School Districts are Muslims. Eid is a holiday celebrated by Muslims from all around the world. Instead of celebrating this beautiful holiday with family and friends, we have to spend that day at school or miss school and lose part of our education to celebrate. Eid is a sacred part. For the Muslim religion only celebrates 2 days, sufficient time to celebrate the holidays. Would further improve the school's environment. I hope you consider our statements today and take the time to ponder them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone get a chance who wanted to speak for the holiday? You all were super impressive. I want to say, fantastic job, very persuasive.
Good evening. My name is Mazahir Saleh. I'm a community organizer at the Center for Worker Justice. I am a proud Muslim and one of the Sudanese American who used to call Iowa City home. I wanted to tell you a little bit about two major Muslim holidays. Islam has a calendar based on the revolution of the moon. It has only 354 days long. It contains several major holidays and is about 11 days different from the Western calendar. So the exact timing of holidays changes years to years because they are based on the lunar calendar. Eid al-Fitr is the first holiday, and it's come at the end of the holy months of Ramadan and celebrate the end of the fasting months. This holiday comes on the first day of the 10th month in the Islamic lunar calendar. Last year, it was June 26th. This year, it might be June 15th. Eid al-Adha is the second major holiday of Islam. It honors the willings of Ibrahim to sacrifice his son as an act of obedience to God's command. It is the 10th of the last month of the lunar calendar. In 2017, it was September 2nd, and this year, it might be August 22nd. By going back and look at the Constitution of the United States, we are a nation that was built to be multi-faith, multicultural. But when we look at what is going on at the national level and a state level, it seems to me that they forget that. We have been seeing how communities have been under attack. Today, our students are stepping up for themselves, and they would like to remind our school districts that we are the nation that we built to be multi-faith, multicultural. And they want the school district to show respect to the community by recognizing Muslim holiday. I know that under the current rules, Muslim students could be excused from class for the religion holiday, but they would still miss a day of instruction. This should be a common sense change, and one that recognizes our growing Muslim community in Iowa City School District and honoring its contribution to our city. This will reflect and honor the extraordinary diversity of a lot of Muslim students enrolled in Iowa City School District. It will also enable teachable moment in the classroom for our students to learn about religion, tolerance, and social contribution of various cultures. Our kids in public school do not have to choose between their school and their religion practice. Let us join districts across the country like Vermont, Michigan, New Jersey, Mass, New York, in recognition of the days as a school holiday and close the public school in observing of Muslim holiday. By looking to those communities who took the lead in making their school more inclusive, there is many ways to do this here. And I would love to show you some of those options, but I have only 4 minutes, I guess. I would be more than happy to sit down and talk further about this. Let us make our community more inclusive, and honoring the great diversity of our district, including our religious diversity, and celebrate our many cultures and faiths. And also I would like to say, to support the district worker and thank the board for being committed to keep all the items on the contract. You guys have the power and you can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have another student group that will be speaking on MLK Day. And you're all coming up together? Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Mariam Keita. I'm a sophomore at Iowa City High School, and we are the Students Against Hate and Discrimination. Today, we are here to provide our feedback on the MLK Day events that took place last month at City High, West High, as well as downtown and at Grant Wood Elementary. And I would like to personally thank those that provided us with the opportunity to give the student perspective on how those events should look and include our voices. Although I'm grateful for the speakers that were offered at City High in honor of Martin Luther King, I'm concerned that we as a community are sending the wrong message out. Do we only honor Dr. King's legacy once a year around his birthday, and do we only acknowledge Black excellence during Black History Month? I would like to remind everyone that the answer to both of these questions are a resounding no, and yet here in the ICCSD, we kind of have a case of not exactly practicing what we preach. One way that we can support all of the students in this district is by recognizing the Islamic holiday of Eid by giving everyone in the district the school days off and dismissing, as we do for holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving. And my peers will soon be up here to share with you some other ways in which we can begin to make sure that our words are matching our actions. They're going to talk about their personal experiences from workshops that took place at both schools and how they might begin to improve for the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nina Levezos-Stakopoulos, and I'm a student at City High. At City, teachers were told to discuss diversity in their classes by Mr. Bacon and instructed not to distribute homework or teach anything that students who would attend workshops would miss. But teachers did not diverge from normal lesson plans, and as a result, less students participated in workshops. I saw many students who had signed up for presentations and did not attend them because they didn't want to make up work from class. Some teachers put an extraordinary amount of effort into their unusual lesson plans while discussing diversity. My Spanish teacher, Dolores Silva, taught us about migrant workers, and Dolores Huerta, a civil rights activist and the visionary of the Great Boycott. Senora Silva told us about her personal affiliation with migrant workers and the effects of pesticides and toxic chemicals. Her story sparked numerous discussions throughout the classroom about diversity and civil rights that we would not have had normally. But not all teachers were as prepared as Senora Silva, and many teachers simply showed a film of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech on repeat without facilitating discussion, immediately returning to regular coursework. Though Dr. King's speech is amazing, students have seen it many times before, and showing it to students every year has very little impact without discussion. I believe this day would have worked better if teachers had more time to prepare and students did not feel obligated to go to class so that they could go to their desired presentations. Additionally, every single workshop offered was filled to capacity, which proves that our students want these opportunities. And finally, please support Muslim students.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane, and I'm a student at West High.
So first, I'd like to say we support the district workers. They do more than anyone could imagine, and our schools wouldn't be the same without them. We also support Muslim students, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up here in front of you guys and speak, considering you guys are adults. And these children showed a lot of courage today, so let's just applaud them one time. Now, on the topic of MLK Day. It went well. I mean, it went great, but it definitely did need improvements. We have a few pieces of advice for next year. Firstly, we want a district-sponsored event on an actual school day. We don't need it on MLK Day, for MLK Day is not the only day we need to celebrate people of color. You can't just care about Black people during MLK Day or Black History Month, as Miriam mentioned before. Black history should not be for 1 month nor 1 day. We deserve more opportunities to have meaningful discussions about race, ethnicity, and more. Next year, we want better advertising and promotion for this event as well. We as a group would gladly offer our help with this advertising and brainstorming. I can speak for only West High, but advertising did not go as planned. I also know that all schools held similar workshops, and that is all schools did not hold similar workshops, and that is because lack of communication between the different schools. One thing that we heard over and over again throughout these events was that schools have an obligation to facilitate meaningful discussions on race, and that is not happening consistently at our schools. 1 day is not enough. Let's have these meaningful discussions more often and have them be facilitated by staff and by the board. Thank you.
My name is Sofia Sittig, and I'm a senior at West High School. The Saturday of MLK weekend was Changemakers Youth Day. As a youth leader, I helped facilitate the opportunity to some of our community members in celebration of Dr. King at the Robert A. Lee Rec Center. I took away some key points from the success of the discussions and activities that were facilitated, and I think that all ICCSD schools should go about this. Dr. King's prime goal was not just for Black and white students to sit in a room together and watch his I Have a Dream speech. His prime goal was for us to take away his message of equality and to incorporate that in our everyday lives. At the Rec Center, activities were placed so that we could take away King's message. For example, there was a large group discussion which followed some of Martin Luther King's Jr. trivia, and a game called The Line, which was designed to open up conversations about privilege by focusing on our similarities rather than our differences. Afterwards, participants broke up into small groups to decompress and discuss what they had learned about each other. Talks were led by youth facilitators, not in a way that would single out people, but rather to bring about conversations of how one may walk through life differently despite being in the same community. We got into smaller groups where everyone shared what they took away from the event and how to incorporate what they learned into bettering our community. This input was given by students of all races and really gave insight on how kids of certain backgrounds were not as aware of issues in this community as were kids of others' backgrounds. This was a wake-up call for some kids of how they could help dismantle these issues that their peers were facing. Everyone walked out with an idea of how to better our community, and that is what all schools should get their students to take away on the celebration of Dr. King.
Thank you.
And I would just like to add that I support these Muslim students.
Hi, my name is Wallace Sittig, and I'm a senior at West High. In honor of MLK Day, West High offered more than 140 sessions, including the use of the N-word to stand or to kneel during the national anthem, Black Beauty, and civil rights through art. During these mainly student-led workshops, several teachers facilitated meaningful discussions. Students that attended these workshops were engaged in critical conversations, and even normally quiet students were involved in these meaningful discussions on race, class, and privilege, and many other issues, which this is a perfect example of practicing rather than simply acknowledging Dr. King's legacy. In certain sessions, students were able to tell stories and share their lived experiences with peers in a safe space, an opportunity that they are not usually afforded in the average school week. It was a moment for personal growth and a good opportunity to hear differing opinions and fostering good discussion. We had students most of these sessions were led by students, but we had some guest speakers come in from like the University of Iowa and other places, as well as teachers leading some of these discussions. And although there were a lot of good things that happened at West High, some of the sessions we felt were completely unrelated to Dr. King's message and these social issues, such as one on just having yoga and cricket. And although exercising is important and all that, I feel as if that could be left for another day and shouldn't be a session on MLK Day where it's a time to talk about social issues. Another thing was that more than 300 students did not attend school that day at West High, and we feel as if attendance should be, or it should be clear that attendance is mandatory. Many students opted or skipped out or just signed up for sessions that were like yoga that were not related at all, and we would just like the school board to address this and try to make a change on these and make it clear that attendance is mandatory. I think that students against hate and discrimination think that West High did a good job in general on MLK Day, but we thought one of our demands was to have these workshop and sessions, and we wanted those to be a day separate than MLK Day. As mentioned before, as Dr. King's MLK Day is very important, but it should not be the only time we are talking about these issues. And in addition, I'd just like to say that we support our secretaries and hope that you care, that you keep what's in the contracts, and also we support having the day off for Eid in support of our Muslim community.
Thank you. Up next, we have Ben Pierce. And following Ben, we'll have Shelly Maxwell.
Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for having me. One thing I like is that my school changed bathrooms to gender neutral. But one thing I don't like is that in classes, some teachers still separate groups by gender, and I think they should let people line up randomly. A non-binary person might be left out if a boy and girl are the only options.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Shelly Maxwell, and then up next will be Sean Harmsen.
Good evening, President Godwin, board members, and administrators. My name is Shelly Maxwell. I live at 307 3rd Avenue in Iowa City. I'm the principal secretary at Hoover Elementary School, just around the corner from where I live. Have you ever seen a child with a broken bone and know what to do to take care of him? Students can get pretty crazy in PE. 3 weeks ago, I had a 5th grade boy appear in front of my desk, holding up his hand. Something had gone obviously horribly wrong because the top portion of one of his fingers was going off in a strange direction. I wasn't sure if it was dislocated or broken, but I knew he needed to get to the ER. I helped him to the health office, we put ice on it, and I made him comfortable. Next, I called both of his parents, and neither of them answered. This caused me concern. I've worked at Hoover for over 10 years, so I know the student body pretty well. And I know that this student suffers from a condition that could potentially turn the situation into something really serious. And so I knew that we needed to get his parents there very soon. While the student and I waited for a return call, we talked about his finger and the likelihood that he was going to need x-rays and probably a cast. We talked about that he would need to make sure that the doctor knew at the ER that he had this condition so that he could let them know in case they didn't have his medical records. His dad showed up eventually, and he had surgery on his hand a couple days later. I tell this story because, while it is unusual, it is not unusual. Each of the 90 members in our unit could offer many stories like this. Secretaries are a critical part of creating a great learning environment in our schools. But on February 9th, the school year secretary bargaining team members were given an initial proposal from the Iowa City Community School District Board of Directors negotiating team. This proposal showed the removal of all permissive topics from the bargaining table and a wage freeze to all current employees in our group. Removing permissive topics would mean that we couldn't even discuss things like hours, vacation, overtime, unless it was presented to us in the district proposal, which it wasn't. However, since then, last Thursday, a letter has been posted on the school district website written by President Janet Godwin that states, unfortunately, we fell short of our goal, and we are now taking active steps to re-engage the Secretary's Union to ensure that all permissive items are retained in the contract. We apologize for our error and we are working to correct it. The Secretary Group appreciates the board's immediate recognition that the offer as it was presented would have created a major, perhaps irreparable rift between the employees and the district. Topics such as hours and vacation overtime going into a handbook would create a great concern in our group, and that the difference between a contract, which is negotiable and binding, and a handbook, which is neither, would have left the secretarial group at the mercy of future administrators and board members who may choose to change the handbook at any time without our input. This is why our concern at the initial proposal was so very great. A secretary is many things: smart, flexible. Most of all, we are caring. We come to our work with many talents, years of experience that only can be learned on the job. Things like how to deal with difficult students. Have you ever played Brio Trains? I hadn't until recently. A kindergartner started showing me how. I've been spending about 10 minutes every day playing with a student who sometimes has a difficult time keeping his hands, feet, and spit to himself. He earns PBIS tickets for remembering his body basics and not hurting his fellow classmates or teachers. Once he's earned enough tickets, then he gets to come down to the office. We play trains. And if I don't show up right away, he says, "Mrs. Maxwell, are you going to come play trains with me?" He takes this time together pretty serious. I relate the train story, to point out yet again how important having dedicated qualified staff like secretaries, custodians, physical plant employees, and nutrition service workers in our district. We all go above and beyond every day. Offering dedicated secretaries a fair wage and keeping permissive topics in our contract is the right thing to do. Secretaries have worked hard over the past 20 years to earn a place at the negotiation table, and we acknowledge your recognition of this mutual level of respect. We look forward to returning to the negotiations to reach a genuine agreement both parties can be proud of, and that will show that the Iowa City Community School District stands behind the promises it makes, just like the hardworking secretaries promise to take excellent care of the children in our schools every day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Shelly. Up next after Sean is Randy Lackender.
I'm a little bit taller than some other people. Hi, my name is Sean Harmsen. I know many of you on the board, some of you I was even knocking doors for before the last election, and it was gratifying to hear that was probably a really good effort to hear that the changes that the board has made so quickly, so thank you for that. I'm here tonight representing the Iowans for Public Education, the Johnson County chapter, statewide, a group that has nearly 13,000 members, and I'm here to let the members of the Secretaries Union and all the workers know that we stand with them as parents, as educators ourselves, some of us. We're just people that care about education, and so important to let them know that we are watching and ready to jump up and make some noise or pat people on the back, depending as necessary. And so just wanted to let you guys know that we are here for you, we are watching, and we will continue to be here for all of the district's workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. So up next is Randy, and following Randy, we'll have Joel Randall.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I'd like to say that thank you for all board members for your offering of the FFA in our schools to our students. And this Iowa City Schools joins nearly the 235 local chapters with 15,000 students that are involved in FFA. And I know as a farmer, I know a lot of these kids won't be farmers, but there's opportunities in agriculture that are huge. Not only that, but the leadership and responsibility that is taught through FFA is very important. And that's what this state is all about. It's ag. And the best way to see that is get off the interstate and take the 2 lanes highways through the byways, and you'll see how important ag is. And I want to thank you again.
Thank you. Joel, and following Joel, we have Mark Ogden. Ogden?
Good evening. My name is Joel Randall. I live at 215 Washington Avenue, North Liberty.
I'm the lead mechanic for the district, the vice president for the local 199, and president of the physical plant chapter of the union. I would like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. The reason I am coming before you is in light of the recent events regarding negotiations. For many years, the district and the union have had a positive relationship with one another. In regards to negotiations and contracts, we have nearly 37 years in the physical plant alone of working together to find a middle ground. When I became president about a year ago, I made it one of my goals to continue the positive relationship with the district, whether working in the capacity of union representative or employee, through hard work, understanding, and mutual respect. I want to thank you all personally for the tough job that you have that was made even tougher by the legislation passed in Des Moines last year. The legislation that gutted Chapter 20 opens up the opportunity for employees and administration to be pitted against each other. We have the chance to continue our relationship unscathed. We have the chance to let the legislators in Des Moines, who have made it very clear that they don't care about investing in public education and the future of Iowa, control our schools and corrupt our communities. We have the opportunity to lead the state and make it clear to Des Moines that our community values its education, values its children, and values its public sector workers. I was pleased to read the message on the district website this weekend, which shows that our school district values its employees by choosing to work to ensure that all permissives are retained in the secretary's contract. Just that alone creates a huge morale boost for the people that have been afraid of losing their benefits and sense of security. Again, I would like to thank the board and administration, and I will look forward to keeping our good relationship intact and helping to create a positive environment for employees and students alike.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Mark, and then on deck is Rockney Cole.
All right, good evening, board. My name's Mark Ogden, lifelong Johnson County resident, farmer for full transparency. In fact, my grandparents, we go back about 5 generations to the Gettysburg battlefield, and our family was forced to leave just before the battle came through, and we find our way here to Johnson County, Iowa. So I want to stand here today, thank Director Hemingway for the leadership in bringing FFA and making that investment, for the board members that voted for that. And, you know, I'm sure those even voted yes, maybe there was a little bit of, hesitancy, but, seeing the risk is low and the benefit high, went for it. Those that voted no, I hope to meet each and every one of you to show you that this investment, $1 million sounds like a lot, but when you put the growth that's going to come out of that from this program, I think you'll look back and say it was the best decision you've made during this tenure. So FFA, I've saw some chatter, through the news, through the community, that maybe people don't quite understand it. So that at the end of the day, it's all about leadership. It's building citizenship in our students. It's about, creating, the core values, the kind of things that just makes good people better. And the other thing is it gives every student in the district the opportunity to participate and, and to have that experience. I currently work in, various realms of manufacturing, that kind of thing. And when I see the FFA resumes come through, they rise to the top pretty quickly because I know that they've got those fundamental, core attributes. You're talking about things about establishing, that moral grounding, true north, pointed true north, unwavering, establishing critical thinking skills, tactical, strategical thinking, how to work well with others, collaboration, working in diverse environments, decision-making in tough times. And, there's no other program I know right now in the district anywhere that's capable of doing that at age level. I know I went through the baby brother, baby sister, that 4-H myself, and didn't get that FFA chance, wish I would have, but I can see what it does. So what's in it for you? What's in it for the community? I think you're looking ahead. You're going to be seeing your future school board members, future bankers, future community leaders, whether it's in the churches, the schools, the various community groups that are out there, all the way up into, industry, commerce, and everything that makes this economy roll. And, oh, by the way, probably a few will be really active in the farm industry, whether it's agribusiness, the ag economy, or just flat out farming. So I want you to just kind of think about that for a moment. And then, the other thing on the surveys, I know there's a few folks who were upset maybe how that played out, whether we did it wrong, we did it right, somewhere in the middle. Every day we all get emails, right, that are unsolicited, and we might push the button, flip the page, let's see what this is all about, let me look into it a little further, and peel the onion, as they say. And personally, I kind of look at these surveys. We had interest, I was excited to see a little bit of interest in it. I suspect there'll be more, but it's kind of the first baby step to lay that groundwork and get this thing going. So we're, as a citizen, taxpayer, I look forward to this thing coming to bear. We'll fully support it as community members. And I thank you for everything you've done getting it this far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, after Rockne, is Robin Clark Bennett.
My name is Rockne Cole, and I currently serve on the Iowa City Council, although I'm coming to you tonight as a person that's passionate in education and passionate in agriculture, especially local foods. First, I want to thank each and every one of you for your service on the school board. I can think of no board that is more difficult, more challenging, and more rewarding. Each one of you sit in that seat because of your shared passion for education, as well as our incredibly talented students that we saw here tonight. And it's such an honor to be in the room with such dynamic young people. And I think in these dark times, this really gives us rays of hope for what they've done. And I share their call that we support the festival and that we offer time off for them as well. But I'm here tonight to talk about the agricultural education vote that you most recently made. I think one of the things that makes your job difficult is that oftentimes you have two people telling you, and various community members telling you, exactly opposite things. And you guys are the ones that have to make those tough choices. When I think of the challenges facing our state, economic development, agriculture, groundwater, the nature of rural place, how we as Iowa Cityans relate to our rural and suburban places. And as I think about some of the challenges we've had in losing touch with Des Moines, I think some of it is that we've lost touch with our agriculture. We've lost sight of where our food comes from, the economic opportunities that could arise from this. And I think these are the sorts of opportunities that FFA will provide. I grew up in Decorah, Iowa, and we had a fabulous FFA chapter. I didn't participate in that, and I really wish that I would have. And as you think about this sort of pilot process, because it's my understanding that that's what this is you're going to go a pilot process and see how that works, I would encourage you to think about, as we articulate the value of this, that this isn't only, in my view, for people that aren't going to college. I think it's for people of all educational levels, that they can connect with the food. And this is not your mother and father's FFA. We're looking at hydroponics. We're looking at STEAM education. We're looking at leadership. I'm so excited. Do you allow 43-year-old lawyers to join FFA? I would love to. And so I think let's just try this. And I think it's just a dynamic opportunity for us to really connect with our young people. And then at the end of that, I think you're going to have to get a critical look at the data and see where the data shows you in terms of whether this is going to work for our community. But when you think about Iowa, I think we're a rural state. And I'm hoping that with this opportunity that we'll see all different types of farmers that will really become excited about opportunities not only in agriculture, but in agribusiness, in economic development, in engineering. All of these are exciting opportunities that you are providing for our young people. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this commitment to our students, to our community, and to our great state of Iowa. Thank you very much.
Bennett, and then following Robin, we have Laura Crossett.
Good evening, thank you. So I think the test of our character is not what we do, not whether we do what's minimally required by law, but how we treat people when we have choices. My kids have had an incredible experience in the Iowa City schools because frontline staff has consistently chosen to do much more than was minimally required. In addition to great teachers, I think of our elementary school secretary, Vicki Tomei, and custodian Effie Rettig, who took pride in our school, juggled the needs of kids, teachers, and parents, were anchors as several principals came and went, and made our kids feel safe and welcome. I think of our City High Music Secretary, Mary Mahaffey, who keeps an excellent program running smoothly, and cafeteria worker Elizabeth Bernal, who's here actually, who watches out for our kids and provides them kindness as well as nutrition. They should be paid 10 times what they earn. But at least they've had the security of a union contract that lays out their hours, safety provisions, sick days when they succumb to the barrage of germs they're exposed to, and a grievance procedure to fairly resolve workplace disputes. Last year, the state legislature dramatically lowered the bar for how districts are required to treat public workers like these. Public employers are now only required to negotiate over starting pay. A few topics are now prohibited, but for most of the contractual agreements negotiated over decades with our staff, it's left to public employers to choose. Will they take the low road and strip all our previous commitments from the contract, or will they show staff the dignity they deserve by voluntarily keeping those agreements? I was appalled to find that our district administrators chose the low road. Even as an initial offer, this proposal is a slap in the face to our dedicated school staff, and they never should have seen the light of day. Characterizing it as a mistake, I think, is too generous. A misspelled proposal, that's a mistake. Proposing to eliminate 99% of a long-standing contract is not. I'm glad to hear that the school board intends to right this wrong, and I hope this leads to some serious discussions about the messages our administration is sending to staff and families about their value. For similar reasons, I stand in support of the students' request that our district show respect for our Muslim staff, students, and families by planning a school day off to coincide with at least one of their most sacred holidays. Our staff deserves the right to sit down as equals and negotiate the terms of their employment. Our families deserve the respect of not being penalized for missing school to celebrate the days that their religion holds sacred. Let's follow the example of our own school staff and do what's right, not just what's minimally required. Thank you.
After Laura, we have Hadean Ali.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening and for the hard and unglamorous work that you do as school board members. My name is Laura Crossett. I'm a 1988 graduate of Lincoln Elementary, a 1994 graduate of West High, and a librarian at the Coralville Public Library. I live in Iowa City, and my son attends kindergarten at Mark Twain. The high school students who spoke earlier make it clear that things have improved drastically in our high schools since I attended them, and yet that we still have a long way to go. I hope you heard their words and were as encouraged as I was. Every morning when we get to school, my son rings the buzzer and says, "Hi, it's me, Peter." And every morning, Whitney Wessling, the amazing secretary at Twain, says, "Hello, Peter." He's an anxious kid, and this is one ritual that helps him know it's okay to go into school every day. I've seen Whitney show that same level of individual care for all the students at Twain. In the midst of handling phone calls and incoming messages from parents, teachers, and staff, she still knows which kids might not have gotten breakfast if they're late, and she always knows who needs a hug. Secretaries, janitors, physical plant workers, groundskeepers, and food service workers aren't just automatons working a machine, making a machine work. They're human beings doing difficult, demanding, essential work for which they are rarely recognized, and as such, they deserve not only in their wages, but also in the conditions of their employment, including sick leave, vacation, grievance procedures, and all the other so-called permissive topics in collective bargaining agreements, topics that have historically been bargained in good faith for the past 40 years. Saturday, the district released a statement noting, quote, that the board and administrative team's intent to protect and preserve prohibited and permissive items was not conveyed clearly in meeting with the Secretaries' Union. I would call that a drastic understatement. A document that reads, the district proposes to remove the following articles from the negotiated agreement: payroll deductions, union rights, employee hours, seniority, discipline and discharge, sick leave, leaves of absence, vacation, health provisions, safety provisions, grievance procedures, wages and salaries, could hardly be clearer in its attempt to strip these employees of everything but a few cents of an hour pay raise. You've all apologized for your error, and I hope that means that you plan to return to the bargaining table ready and willing to include those items in the next collective bargaining agreement, and that you will soon come to the table with the janitors and food service workers unions with the same good faith. The people who make our schools run deserve no less. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Up next, we have Raphael.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Hadean Ali, and I have been living in Iowa City for the last 15 years. First of all, I would like to express my greatest appreciation and gratitude for the opportunity to have our voice heard and our, inspirations, hopes, and occasionally our concerns be heard. Like I said, I have been living here for 15 years. I'm dad of 3 boys, 3 wonderful sons, with two of them born and raised in the great city of Iowa we all fondly and proudly call home. Good news is that many of the speakers before me saved you and me from points that I was about to raise. And this is maybe good news. I'm not going to take the whole 4 minutes. Anyway, I would like to, just as a parent of 3 boys in all levels of schools, I have one in elementary, Weber Elementary, one in Northwest Junior High, and the third at West High. It is very demanding and hustling, like every Eid morning when we had to prepare and get ready to celebrate. We have to make phone calls here and there and make sure that they are excused. This is, in my opinion, it is unduly there. I would love to see my kids celebrating without hassles, without thinking, without the stress of missing a test or preparation for test or quiz. So I really would like to see this issue given serious consideration. My other point is that we need this issue to be discussed and given the duly consideration, because in my opinion, it is not only about these technicalities or hassle, but it is about recognition, psychological dimension in it. I do believe that we are Muslims. We appreciate that we are recognized and considered part of the greatest country in the world. Just this reminds me an occasion that was back in 2015. A friend of mine and I went to attend what then called Muslim Recognition Day, if anybody of you familiar with it. And it was Proclamation Day signed by the former Governor Vilsack back in 2006, and it was about recognizing Muslims as part of the community. And there was a Proclamation Day, which was in April 2015. Like I said, I went there with a friend of mine, and it was just coincidence that our today's president was there at the governor's mansion, governor's office, and I have my picture taken with him. And unfortunately, I hear these days that this recognition day is no more there. I hope this will be not real news. But the reason why I am raising this issue today is that that day, I felt my best moment in America, living for 23 years, because I felt recognized, and the whole assembly was giving us a standing ovation just for being Muslims, just for visiting them. And today, what we need for our kids is this keyword, recognition. And believe me, it is a magic word. Maybe many of you were never in a moment or in a situation that you need to be recognized. But for us as new immigrants with a minority faith and from different country origins, it is great feeling. Believe me, it is unbelievable feeling to be recognized. For what you are. And I just hope this recognition, will be achieved in this great city of Iowa. Like I said, I have been living for 15 years, and it never happened that one of my kids came back complaining from school. It never happened that I had to go to discuss any issue with any of the schools, and this didn't come from vacuum. It came because of people great like you, all of you, were behind these things, behind these good ideals that America stands for: equality, justice, and recognition and inclusion for everybody, regardless of religion or faith or color or country of origin. Thank you, Iowans, for providing us one of the greatest, blessed cities to live in America. I lived in so many different cities, but like I said, I ended 15 years ago here, and I don't think I'm going to change. I have never thought about leaving this great country. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, School of Board. Thank you for everybody in the attendance audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Up we have Raphael. Following Raphael is Pat Brenneman.
Good evening, board member. Here, I'm Rafael Moratay, and I'm director for the Center for Worker Justice. I'm a dad, a kid in the school district, and on behalf of the Board of Directors of Center for Worker Justice, we are here to support your employees, the worker from the school district. And we were watching all the negotiation, and hope that they moving forward, right? Because many of the people would say we are a city of values and a progressive city, and we want to see that. We want to see that from the school district. And my second topic tonight is about the busing. I hear that you want to talking about the busing today, and I hope that low-income families will have the benefit to be more included in the system right now, exclude for have the opportunity to take the buses and don't have the opportunity to get to the extra activities after school. And unfortunately, that when the kids walk, right, I know the culture here is the kids can walk, but this kind of weather, they only hurt them than benefit. And then on the long term, they're gonna miss in the school. The kids become sick. And then if the low-income family have to spend money, they really hurt their economy. And the third one is about, the center is so happy to celebrate diversity and celebrate the leadership and encourage for the kids from the web school. We are delighted to see the encouraged to come and write to you, Tina, and I'm glad you invite them to come here today and make a big celebration, because we're here because we believe that you guys can make a better Iowa City, a better school district. So thank you for that. Have a good night.
Thank you. Following Pat, we have Beth Yates.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, district administrators, I know most of you, you may not recognize me tonight because I'm not dressed all in white. My name is Pat Brenneman. I'm the lead painter for the Iowa City Schools. I'm in my 29th year in that position with the district. During that time, I have served and do serve on numerous committees and negotiation teams. The tenor of my remarks to this board, our board, changed from last week to this following the release of the statement from the board on union contracts by President Godwin. Our bargaining unit, SEIU, in one form or another, has bargained for physical plant employees and custodians with the district in good faith for almost 4 decades. We now include grounds workers, secretaries, and food service also. We have bargained when times were good
We have bargained when the district has approached us at negotiations, told us times were tight, and asked us, quote, to do more with less. We have been there together when the district has asked for our support on one bond issue or another. We all know there is a new reality when it comes to negotiations because of what our state government did last year in striking of Chapter 20. We would like to thank you, our board, in advance for being the guiding light in the state of Iowa, showing other districts not how you can negotiate in this new reality, but how you should negotiate. Thank you.
Thank you. Following Beth, we have Julie Van Dyke.
I'm Beth Yates, and my statement might be redundant at this point and not nearly as eloquent, but it's certainly as sincere. I'm a nutrition services employee. I just want to applaud the school board for the action you've taken to retain permissive topics of bargaining in our contracts. It's highly commendable on your part to not only state that you recognize our value as employees, but furthermore, to demonstrate that you mean it by your willingness to bargain with us as equals. Despite the legislature's crushing blow to workers' rights, it is heartening to know we still work in a school district that realizes a work environment that is fair to its employees is as an important part of the success of the students. Thank you for your support. Oh my God, I'm so nervous.
Have Amanda Long.
It's lovely to portray it as a mistake. A mistake kind of implies it was unintentional. Didn't nobody look at it before you guys put that out there? Or did your labor-friendly lawyer look at it before you guys put it out there? Our superintendent, who's a former HR director from his previous district, where I would remind you that a nearly unanimous vote by the teachers union there of no confidence in his leadership is well documented, and I'm happy to provide the references for that. I just pulled one up on my phone. In 2009, December of 2009, shortly before he was hired here in 2010. When he was interviewed here, one of the things that he was quoted in the Gazette as saying is, education is all about relationships, relationships, relationships. I am exceedingly distressed to see that as soon as we have more budget cuts for our schools and our classrooms that are already bare bones, you appear to get into a position to try and take more money from the people who have the least. And yet we vote again and again to give our superintendent raises. Is he not making enough money? Do you not have enough people? You know, it used to be that all of these seats here were actually right up here. There was no barrier. You've created barriers. It's now 3 deep. It keeps growing. Whose mistake? You know, it's great that you're going to do something about it. I'm sure we're all watching to see that happen. But the problem is that I see over and over again is we make a lot of mistakes here. Our administration makes a lot of mistakes. And never once do they say, hey, we did this wrong. It's always an opportunity or a mistake or unintended. I'm sorry, but these things that you do and the things that our administration does are intended. They meet with their executive board to go over them. You gotta stop taking from the bottom and you gotta start taking from the top, because we don't need more highly paid administrators 3 rows deep. What we need is secretaries and custodians and the grounds people and the food service people who actually have more contact with our children than probably any one person in a junior high level school or high school. They're the ones that are keeping our kids safe. Stop taking from the people who have the least, including Raphael's reference to the busing. Stop taking from the people who have the least when we have budget cuts, and start telling us what you're taking from the top, what you're taking from the haves. because over and over again, I'm up here trying to speak for what bothers me about what you're taking from the have-nots. Stop it. Show us what you're taking from the top in good faith. And please restore the social worker that was taken from the Northwest Junior High special ed classroom, because when one of those kids self-harms or commits suicide, that will have been a choice that you made because you didn't backfill a very crucial position that's needed in that room, where you've had 3 teachers now in 1 year, 4 if you count the ones that left last year. Backfill that social worker position. You have a brand new teacher, new to teaching, in that room, and she needs that support, and our kids needs that support. There are kids in there that you've bused from the southeast side over, and they need help. And they need help in that room. And saying the Grantwood AEA social worker that is assigned to the school backfills it doesn't cut it. It's not true. She's not in the room.
Thank you, Julie. Up next, Amanda Long, followed by Charlie Eastham.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Long. I am the second baker at Iowa City West High. I am a 1994 graduate of Iowa City West High, and when I graduated from West High, every senior gets to put something in the newspaper, and I had said, I will be a West High teacher. Well, my path back to West High wasn't quite what I thought it was when I was 18 years old. But 5 years ago, I got the opportunity to come back to my high school to serve my students. I love my job. I love my students. They're great kids. And I love the school district. But last Thursday, I was very disappointed when I was standing in solidarity with the secretaries to find out that the proposal was stripping all of our rights except for base pay, which is pay for future employees, not current employees. I took a picture of the proposal. I posted it on Facebook. I let people know this isn't right. And I was very happy on Saturday when one of my coworkers gave me the link of the statement made by President Godwin that it was a mistake and that they're going to come back to the bargaining table and they will not make this mistake in 2 weeks when they meet with physical plant and with the nutrition service. And I would like to thank you for realizing the mistake that was made. And I've been at 4 negotiations. I look forward to negotiating with the school district again so that we can go ahead and keep our contract and keep support of all of your union members. Thank you.
Thank you. Following Charlie, we have Pauline Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Eastham. I live at 953 Canton Street in Iowa City. Just wanting to support the students who are requesting a holiday timed in the district for Muslim students in recognition. I think that's a great idea, frankly, and I'd be really looking forward to working with the district to work through some of the details that we will have to do to get that actually done. So thanks.
Thank you, Charlie. Pauline, and then following Pauline, we have Jennifer, Scherer.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And thank you for your service to the community. As you know from personal experience, I know that's not always the easiest thing to do, serving the public and trying to do the right thing. My name is Pauline Taylor. I'm a longtime resident of Iowa City, a parent of a long time ago West High grad. I'm also a retired member of the healthcare profession at UIHC, and as part of that, longtime proud member of SEIU, the healthcare chapter, which also the school district workers are very much a part of our union as well. And also as part of that, I negotiated the first 6 contracts that the union had in place there at the hospital. So I understand what it is to negotiate a contract. We took it very seriously. I've always taken it very seriously because I'd like to remind you that a contract is a binding legal document. And because of that, I thank you, President Godwin, for your statements, but two of the words you described bothered me, and that was calling it a mistake and saying that we need to be patient with you as new board members, that you might stumble. But again, reminding you that this is a legal document, and I don't think that any of you in your personal lives would enter into any type of legal document stumbling or mistakenly. So you really do need to take it seriously. I can't help but wonder that what would have happened if there wouldn't have been such a public outcry. Thank you to all the people that have shown up and are speaking to this, because it is an important matter. These school district workers are important for our children and this part of our community. But I would like to say that do not follow the Republican agenda. Lead the way and keep the contract language intact as it is and as it has been for 20 to 40 years. Truly bargain in good faith. And I'd also like to tell everybody, let them know that organized labor is remaining strong and is here to stay.
Thank you, Pauline. We've got Kathy Gonzalez.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you tonight. My name's Jennifer Shearer, and I'm here as a community member and as a parent of a 3rd grader and a 6th grader at Lucas Elementary. Go Mighty Hawks. And I do want to start by saying I want to express my admiration and respect for the students who spoke earlier and how important it has been for my children to see the faith traditions of their classmates honored and recognized in our school district. And I'm here tonight because I was so shocked last week to see the copy of the proposal that was presented to the Secretary's bargaining unit. And right after that shock came a flood of very unexpected memories. So 7 years of elementary school, it was a moment that made me recognize the way in which our secretary, Angela Kessler at Lucas Elementary, is the glue that holds that school together. And the way in which she has cared and loved my children in very particular personal ways, which I know she does for every child in the school. Ranging from the big items, and I won't tell all the stories because I don't have my daughter's permission, but believe me, there are some good ones. Let's just say my youngest daughter had some behavioral bumps in the road in the fall of this year. And after getting together and talking with the team of teachers and staff, it ultimately was Angela who figured out one of the keys to incentivizing her to suddenly have a light bulb go on, and I have never seen a happier, more enthusiastic kid every morning when she goes to school since. To the small items, including this morning when I had to call the office and confirm that, yes, it was picture day, even though my oldest daughter couldn't find her picture form. Part of what I want to reiterate that's been said this evening is how proud I am to live in a community where we have shown a strong consensus for the way we want our public institutions to treat their staff and employees in the context of a devastating environment in our state. And every other public contract, to my knowledge, in Johnson County, covering employees of the county, covering employees of the city, and we were reminded powerfully by the ICEA update earlier, including our teachers, has been extended, and I think we should be incredibly proud of that. I'm as heartened as anybody to hear that the board is recommitting itself to retaining strong contracts with the rest of their employees. But I have to say the lingering question for me as a community member and a parent is how could this have happened? And I welcome and look forward to hearing the board's further assurances and explanations of how it can be that key members of our administrative team are so out of step with our community consensus and our community expectations. So thank you for your time, and thank you for recommitting yourselves to what our community clearly, strongly, passionately expects. Love you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And following Kathy, we have Don Barbarowski. Apologies if I didn't pronounce that correctly.
Hi, I'm Kathy Gonzalez, and this is the first Iowa City School Board meeting I've ever been to. So I might suggest speaker out there so that I can actually hang out with my kids because I don't have childcare at night. So it does make it difficult to attend. But actually, what I wanted to propose to the board is to look into a pilot program to offer junior kindergarten or alternative kindergarten in the school district. I've grown up in Iowa my whole life and grew up in the Cedar Rapids and Linn-Mar school districts, where that's actually pretty standard. It's been around for years. And my thoughts on that are, oops, sorry. I really, I have another son too that's been 3 or 4 year old preschool as well and has a July birthday. And it's very difficult for those kids that are kind of on that, they do qualify technically to go to kindergarten, but may not be socially ready yet. But then there's no gap program for them because they're only allowed to attend the 4-year-old preschool in the year they turn 4. So the alternative is to either pay for, which we've had to do, private education for that interim year, pay for full-time daycare, or leave them home, which I think any administrator would understand and teacher would agree that that's actually detrimental to kids to not have consistent education. Oh, he's with his brother, so I think it's okay. So my proposal is to, and I have copies if you would like me to hand them out, to consult with the teachers union contract because I don't actually know what that would impact, but to talk to the current kindergarten teachers to convert 2 existing kindergarten teachers to a junior kindergarten program, preferably 2 in different schools, 1 on each side of town, that would be open to anyone in the district to enroll their child. And that way, if there are extra spots, then it could be a situation where the school district could allow enrollment for a fee for people that are not in the school district. The advantages I see for this proposal far outweigh the disadvantages. The advantages for me is that there's no new additional classroom space you need to budget for. You don't need to budget for new teachers. The curriculum is not new. I don't actually think it would be a huge learning curve or a lot of money and extra training. And I believe there are kindergarten teachers in our district that would volunteer to do this pilot. And I think that you'll find a lot of parents really eager to find these options. And I think it would actually reduce a lot of the resources that are spent now on discipline issues throughout our school year for students that struggle the whole time. Maybe it's just socially, it's just their age. But also reduce the amount of resources that are spent on trying to catch up those kids that just are struggling because they're just too young and they haven't caught on and they're not up to the grade level of their peers. And I think a lot of that, it's unfortunate that a lot of parents, we have to choose what you can afford for what's best for your kid. And it's a difficult situation, and I really think that this would be a great opportunity and to join the rest of a lot of the major school districts in the state, as well as a lot of school districts nationwide in offering this type. The 2 disadvantages I see is you may need to offer either some busing or just the parents would have to bring their kids outside, drive them themselves if they're not in the school district, in that elementary area, and that some students overall would be in our district for 14 years instead of 13. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kathy. Do you have a copy of the proposal?
I do. Actually, you have like 10, so.
If you want to hand it to Kim, that would be fabulous.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Thanks. Thank you.
Dawn, last but not least.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dawn Barbarowski, and my wife and I both work for the district and are proud union members in support of productive negotiations for all of our employees. We also have 2 children who have been students through our school district. I also support the earlier request for recognizing major holidays as we broaden our community. I'm here on behalf also of in support of infusing LGBTQ supportive practices, policies, professional development, curriculum, and a more connected cultural community within our everyday school environments. Why? Well, if we look at the recent climate survey data, it's rather bleak for our LGBT students. We won marriage equality mostly, however, LGBTQ issues are still not really discussed in school. It is something that tends to be avoided. We can change this, and we can change these staggering statistics. So according to the Trevor Project, the rate of suicide attempts is 4 times greater for LGB youth and 2 times greater for questioning youth than that of straight youth. Suicide attempts by LGB and questioning youth are 4 to 6 times more likely to result in injury, poisoning, or overdose that requires medical attention compared to their straight peers. There is true intention for it. 1 of 6 students in grades 9 through 12 nationwide, according to their survey, in the past year has seriously considered suicide. And LGBT youth who come from highly rejecting families are 8.4 times as likely to have attempted suicide than LGBT peers who have not. So according to an analysis by the Southern Poverty Law Center using FBI hate crime data and population estimates, LGBTQ Americans are targeted in hate crimes 8.3 times the rate you'd expect based on the size of their population. Life doesn't have to be that way. Suicide is preventable, and hate can be diffused, but through education. We can sweep away the shame and build empowerment and pride. We can wipe away bullying and develop respect and community. Now, some may think, how is this appropriate for elementary school? But really, this begins at preschool because it's all about families. It's about families and love and being comfortable and proud to be yourself and building those supportive communities for one another. Numerous studies now show that gender, that innate idea of knowing who you are and how you see yourself, is established as early as 18 months to 2 years old. We know that we currently have gender-diverse students attending our elementaries, our junior highs, and our high schools. They deserve to be recognized by their authentic name, pronouns, and feel safe to be themselves. Our community also includes LGBTQ teachers, staff, and families. On paper, our district mission and non-discrimination policies look progressive, but in reality, we have inconsistent practices, injustices, and FERPA concerns for our most vulnerable and discriminated population. You can change that. You can make us the leaders in the state. We are in the most progressive county in the state. Rise up. We need to do more for our students than the minimum. We need to be leaders and show them the respect and give us a safe place to go to learn. And if I could please end with, as educators, we have an obligation to ensure that each of our students feel valued and connected, as well as prepared with an awareness and a respect for the diverse world in which they live. It is within this safe, supportive, and respectful environment that they can be authentically themselves and most receptive to learning. I encourage you to be advocates and push to assure that our district rises up to be leaders, going beyond that minimal approach, and make all of our school environments open, supportive, and welcoming places for all of our students across the district. Every single student deserves an educational environment that reflects and values them and their families, no matter race, religion, ability, gender, cultural background, or documentation status. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. So that concludes community comment. Thank you all for your comments and for participating tonight. We'll move into our consent agenda. We've got 11 or 10 consent items in front of us. Phil, do you have comments on the bills?
Yes. First, I want to apologize to the last speaker for my inherent inability to put my phone on silent. Yes, in this pay period, we issued checks for over $2.8 million. $1 million worth of general funds were dispersed. $9,300 going to the Des Moines Opera for opera experience for our elementary students. $5,500 for a slip on a brake pedal and damage to a vehicle, and $50,000 going to legal fees out of the 31 account for our GO bond, which for this period was $277,612. There was one trailer issue that was brought to our attention. It was being paid for out of 3 different accounts, so it kind of appeared on the check registry that there was 3 trailers being purchased, and it was really just one, but the funds were coming from 3 different accounts, and that was clarified, and everything looks fine. I have nothing else.
Get your work on that.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second it.
Any further comment? If not, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Phil, yours hasn't registered. Yours did not register?
Oh, it didn't come up. Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Next, we'll move to Director Liaison Reports. Any points directors would like to make?
I just actually would like to thank 2 of our directors for their outstanding liaison activities this month. First of all, I want to say thank you to Phil. The student trip that to the Chicago Car Show is tremendous and wouldn't be happening without you. And I also want to thank all the donors that are making this trip possible, and those donors are listed in board docs. And Paul, I want to thank you for the outstanding piece that you wrote highlighting the Share Your School Day at Southeast Junior High. And I appreciate you highlighting all the great things that are happening there. And we're very proud of that. And thank you for sharing that with the board. And it should appear in the paper this week, hopefully, or soon.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Policy and governance update, Paul?
Yeah, we met last Tuesday, and we covered a few things, but we're going to have 2 things coming back to the board. So in the agenda setting, we'd like to put Appendix 2, which is the superintendent evaluation process, which we've discussed, and we want to just make sure we get that in line with what we're doing. Also, we'll bring back the 600 policies, which are legally mandated policies, and it's the 600 series is the education program. We went over those and made a few changes, and we think those are ready for you guys to take a look at as well. Some of the other things that we talked about in our education committee, we briefly covered beginning to talk about cell phone use and social media use, cell phone for students and in school, and social media mainly for ourselves. We also discussed beginning to take a look at our overall policies and maybe tightening those up a little bit better so that they're easier to find for everyone. And we looked at a couple models and began looking at Cedar Rapids schools and then a couple other districts for what they do for their policies on their board docs on their web.
Okay, thanks. Any questions?
Is it, we making any progress on conflict of interest or fraternization?
We have not had those. We had conflict of interest the first meeting that we had, but but we haven't come back to that part yet.
Yeah, we pulled out, the example we have are nepotism, and this is kind of where so it's in 3 different places, and they say 3 different things. And so this is kind of, it kind of shines a light on the fact that we need to tighten up the whole thing. We really need to understand what our policies are, where to find them easily, what is an administrative guideline versus a policy versus so there's just it's kind of all over the place, and I think that was when we were looking into that was like, oh, this is not in sync with our own document. So that's kind of a part of that whole thing.
Other questions, comments for Paul? The next item, negotiations update. We've talked a lot about negotiations tonight. We did meet in an exempt session prior to the meeting tonight. We will be having another exempt session on the 27th to go through the action steps that we outlined this evening in terms of working out contract details related to permissives for the Secretary Union. And so we have some action items on that we'll be following up on the 27th and then going forward in our negotiation process after that. I don't know, is there anything else folks would want to add to that? Lots of work will be going forward on this point going forward. Legislative update. Actually, I was wondering, Paul, you were actually in Des Moines today advocating around the voucher.
Yeah, I went to Des Moines today. They had a subcommittee hearing on House Study Bill 651, which is talked about vouchers and charter schools. I worked with Representative Masher and Representative Nielsen. They're 2 of the members on that subcommittee to go through that bill and take a look at some of the things that were problematic for us or issues that we may have had with it. Did go through subcommittee and got recommended to go to committee by a 3-2 vote, pretty much on party line. And that will go to committee either on Wednesday or Thursday of this week, most likely.
Any other comments or updates from board members who participated in other legislative activities, League of Women Voters, perhaps? Nothing to report. Okay, the next item, National Speech and Debate Education Day Resolution.
I move that we, sorry, I'm trying to get it to come up here. Approve the resolution recognizing National Speech and Debate Education Day.
Second.
Any further comment? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Yes.
Still not getting you vote? Yes, thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up, post-secondary readiness report. Diane, I believe you're covering this tonight.
I am. I just had to figure out how to use the mic first. This is a report that the state first offered to us a year ago, so I brought those results to you about this time last year, and I think you asked me to bring these back again. There is a website that you can go to through the state that you can look up any high school in the state of Iowa and get the same kind of data. So what I did was I just took the report that the state provided us about the statewide data, pulled off the information for our district, and just embedded that in the report so you could use the state for some comparisons. So what this shows is basically the percent of students who enroll in post-secondary education within 1 year of graduation. That's the first page there. On the second page, it shows you the percent of students who need to take a remedial course when they attend college, typically at a community college, but also can be at a four-year university. So we show those percentages there in reading and math. And that would be a course that wouldn't be earning them college credit. It would be a course that they would need to take in order to then access the college courses in reading and math. And then the final page shows you the percent of students that actually graduate with a degree, and it shows you that 1 year out, 2 year out, all the way through 6 years out, and the percent that have eventually attained a degree.
Questions from directors?
Yeah, in the, I know like the first year I was on the board, there was some discussion about the dropout rate of students from some of our protected groups going to Kirkwood. Do we have any statistics on that as far as for our Black and Hispanic students that attend Kirkwood, what their proficiency is that way? Or the dropout rate at Kirkwood?
So you're asking the percent of our kids who attend Kirkwood who eventually drop out?
Yes.
Is that? I don't know if we have that data, but I can ask Kirkwood if they have that.
Yeah, I know I got it, like I say, the first year I was on the board, and,
Okay.
and it was an alarming rate, and I'd like to see if we're doing any better addressing that.
Other comments or questions for Diane?
I think that this would be something we can maybe go into a little deeper in an ed committee when we were talking about our state assessments and everything at that time. I think that'd be a good time to do it as well.
Thanks for catching that, JP. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that report, Diane. Moving on to LGBTQ Student Climate Survey Report. Kingsley.
Good evening, Board. I'll keep this brief. I'll let Sarah do most of the talking. There's just 3 points I want you to consider. I haven't been at many meetings. At times, this is usually my catch-up time or work time to get out information to different families, teachers, students, whatever have you. I do think that Don Bobrovsky presented a really confident and clear statement on our climate in our schools, in particular for LGBT students. We need to do more, we need to do better. The data is something that is consistently discussed in many of the community meetings I attend, and we need to focus. I know that there's a lot of different competing interests that happen on a regular basis, but when I see this data, it's disheartening. And unfortunately, many of our students aren't able to come here or don't feel comfortable coming here and speaking in a public forum. That was something that was loud and clear from the standpoint during our task force, but I wanted to make sure I convey that message to you as well. The other 2 comments that I'll make before I hand it to Sarah is that, again, this is an extremely important and serious issue around this work, and again, the data that you see. And I do want to make sure, and then I know that Dr. Bruck would not like me doing this, give credit where credit is due. I know that I consistently tell you that Dr. Bruck is the person behind a lot of this work, and she is. And I just want to be clear that, you know, it's more than it's more that's being asked of her. It's nights, it's weekends. I know that because I'm working nights and weekends, and she's still sending me emails upwards of 10, 11, and then somehow getting up at 5 and 4. And so I just want to make sure that there's a level of understanding of the amount of work that she puts in. And just so you understand, there's no dollars being exchanged between the university around this work, and again, she has another job in 2 different agencies. And so, again, she didn't want me to do that, but I felt like I was obligated to do so, and so, Dr. Brett?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was going to happen, but do you guys have the reports in hard copy? Okay, well, I'll give you a hard copy. There we go. Okay, so since this is the first time that I've presented in front of this particular board, I thought that I would start with a little bit of context and motivation for where this task force report is coming from. So first of all, this is the 3rd year in our equity implemented partnership. So this task force is the second multi-stakeholder task force that we have done. And it is part of a cyclical process that we do every year. So it is a culmination of a year-long process. So on the left-hand side, or right-hand side for you guys, you can kind of see the process that we use. We started out with conceptualizing the partnership 3 years ago, but since then, every year we go through the same process. We start with a needs assessment, which is looking at the experiences of schools from the perspective of both students and teachers.
Second, then we identify focus areas or areas of particular students that are having different kinds of experiences in the schools. Then we convene multi-stakeholder task forces to look through policy briefs that we put forward to say, here's what's going on in the country, here's what's going on in your district, here's what are some evidence-based solutions that other districts and schools have tried. And we put forth general recommendations so that a task force of teachers, students, community members, and administrators can come together to discuss what are the strengths and weaknesses of those recommendations and what are the things that you should be thinking about for your particular district. That is what the task force did here, and that is part of our process. And so that's sort of the context. The other motivation for putting this particular task force together is that in the second year of the student survey, we found systematic and sort of disheartening disparities for LGBT students. So in the previous year, we found really stark racial disparities, and we continued to find those last year. But because we asked more gender-inclusive demographic questions and also asked about sexual orientation, we were able to identify that there was some pretty systematic disparities for those students as well. So that was the motivation of putting forward a task force focused on these particular students. So the task force came together over the fall, and we met several times, and we went through a series of different types of recommendations, different strategies that the district could take. These are the 5 key recommendations that are concrete strategies that the district could take to address these issues today. The first is to support students and student groups, more specifically to put adult advocates in every one of the schools that particularly are knowledgeable and experienced in dealing with LGBTQ students and their issues, so that they feel both included but also affirmed. And any particular issues that would come up, they would know how to deal with them appropriately. The second is to enhance the inclusiveness of the curriculum and the materials. One of the things that we ask in the student survey every year is about the inclusiveness of the content and materials, and one of the things that the LGBTQ students in the district are pretty lower on in terms of their respective to other students is that they don't feel like the curriculum is very inclusive, and a lot of the teachers on the task force reiterated that from their own personal experience and professional experience. The third is something that came up in our last task force 2 years ago, which is no innovation in the schools is going to move forward without educating the educators themselves. So there are a lot of dedicated professionals in the district, and this is not trying to shame teachers or say that they're deficient in any way, but people can always learn to be better at their craft, and one of the things that a lot of teachers could become more knowledgeable about is LGBTQ inclusiveness, both in terms of their own education and how to put that in their own curriculum. The next is something that the district has already tried in one school so far, which is inclusive bathrooms. So inclusive school environments, not just in terms of for LGBT students, but all students in the school, creates a more safe and inclusive environment when you have gender-neutral bathrooms. And that's something that lots of schools around the country are doing. The last recommendation is to strengthen district policies that already exist and the practices that the district is already doing. And in particular, looking at the administrative records to make sure that they're LGBT inclusive. This is everything from allowing students to have their name, their chosen name listed, to chosen pronouns or authentic pronouns listed, as well as other sorts of details about their personal records. In addition to those 5 recommendations, which are concrete things that the district could do to move forward, there are several other recommendations in the report that go into more detail. Those are just the top 5 that were the most, the recommendations with the most consensus from the task force, but there are several other recommendations that are both short-term and long-term in the report. But in addition to these particular recommendations, one of the other things that was very clear from the task force was the importance of having a clear district commitment to these issues. So they were well aware of the fact that we had a task force last year mostly focused on racial equity issues. And one of the most important things is not just to agree with the recommendations and to implement them, but also to make it visible, both symbolically and materially, that you're supporting these efforts in the long term. The second, and it's related to this level of commitment, is making people accountable and having a consistency in the implementation of these recommendations across the schools and over time. The last is everybody on the task force really appreciated the fact to be on the task force and wanted to make clear that one of the things they saw that was very important to them was to make sure that moving forward, the process of making decisions, including things like implementation and administration, were kept inclusive. So they appreciated both staff and students and teachers being included in the decision-making process, and they hope that that would continue in the future. So in terms of next steps, many of the things that are in the report that are recommendations are things that could happen now. Many are low-cost things that don't require any particular budget approval. Some are things that might be more long-term and might require more budget approval. One of the things that we would say is the report is very comprehensive in that it really could be used as a guiding document for the next few years moving forward. Many of the recommendations put forth by the task force are evidence-based solutions. We talked through with them what other districts were trying. In the report, we have sort of embedded their recommendations in what we know from research in other places on LGBTQ students and how to make your school environments more inclusive. The last is that as part of the partnership, we do this needs assessment and then multi-stakeholder task force in order to bring these recommendations to you. But the other key pieces of a partnership like this is to make sure that you continue to evaluate any programs or practices that you put in place so that you're holding people accountable and you're knowing whether or not they work. This process has worked very well in the past. 2 years ago when we came before you with the last task force recommendations and the school board approved the implicit bias training and the restorative justice pilot, we have been evaluating those programs. And I think that's really something to be commended for the district to both implement those kinds of policies to try to increase the inclusivity for students, but also to hold people accountable and evaluate those initiatives.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's a phenomenal report. Could you go back to the first slide on your recommendations? Yeah. Where you're talking about an advocate at every school, you're talking elementary, junior high, high school, so every an advocate there.
Yep.
And that way. And then on the inclusive curriculum, do you have some, some concrete examples or things? Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so there's in the section of the report that has that, the very top recommendation that was most advocated by the task force is making the regular curriculum review process include LGBT issues. So there's a regular review process that I think happens every 6 or 8 years in the district, and they wanted to make sure that we leverage not only existing resources, but existing processes to make sure that you can just embed this in it. You're not creating something additional, you're just using the existing process to ensure inclusivity for LGBT students, just like you would for racial or ethnic minorities.
Okay, excellent. And then on the next group, the next slide forward, with creating inclusive restrooms. Since we're going through this massive construction and renovation of our buildings, do you have some concrete, no pun intended, recommendations that way as far as making sure that we're providing the right type of facilities?
The only recommendation that I would have is, given research that's been done in other districts, is that you make sure that it's in a, it's not seen as something that's in the corner of the building or somewhere that's like, you have to travel far to, or it's seen as only for trans students or only for specific students, that it's actually seen as not just a gender neutral, but gender inclusive bathroom that everybody uses, and that it's an essential part of the district, or an essential part of the school. Other than that, there's nothing from the research side that says anything else. I'm not like a facilities manager person. I don't know which bathroom you would select at each school or anything like that.
Sure.
I would just like to ask the fellow board members here if there would be support for putting the topic of the district mandate that you requested, maybe on a work session agenda, and we could, I'm wondering if maybe even you could craft something for us that you're looking for us to adopt as a board. Maybe we could put that on a work session and get that wordsmithed and adopted at a future meeting.
I saw Kingsley want to speak, so I'm deferring. I think he said yes, even though his microphone is not working. I'll say yes for him.
And something else too, I mean, sort of along the lines, I'm always trying to come up with action plans for things. And I like that you're noting there's some potentially short-term things we can do, low cost, get things done, but that some of the work that we need to do is really more meaty around culture change and implementing different ways of thinking, teaching, learning throughout all of our systems. And that requires sort of longer-term planning. In my world, it's sort of, what's that roadmap look like? What are the things that we can do quickly? What are some things we need to be intentional about over a period of time, and how do we make sure that we're checking these things and making the impact and having the impact that we're expecting? And so I'm sort of, how can we craft this roadmap? I'm sort of looking at Kingsley for some guidance there so that we are ensuring that we've got the proper agendas on the P&G committee if we're wanting to look at our policies and making some revisions there and making sure we've got curriculum activities underway. And what's that longer term plan look like, Kingsley, to address the recommendations that we have?
Yeah, I think you're right on board as far as looking at it as a tiered approach. I mean, I think Dr. Burke really focused on the fact that there's some immediacy with some of the issues that we can put forward right away, and then there's still some long-term conversations. Director Hemingway highlighted, adult advocates in the building, and with our budget cuts and funding issues, I mean, who will those people be? It was a question that was discussed at the task force level, and how thin can we stretch our folks? And so I think there's some conversations we need to have as far as what that looks like, and who can we tap into and grow from training and other things. But that's some of the work that we've already done. I've had my interns that are actually back there right now, Andrea and Rachel, work on somewhat of a tiered approach. And then I can't remember the meeting off the top of my head, but we have an LGBT steering committee meeting that will focus on that, and we can provide that information at the upcoming work session as well.
Thank you.
And Kingsley, at the upcoming work session, could you also provide more detailed information on what that LGBTQ specific training would involve for educators, and what are other districts doing? Are they solely focusing in on, because when I see the word educator, I think of teachers, but are we talking about our administrative teams that's in our buildings as well as all staff? Because as we know, our kids come in contact with secretaries, janitors, paras, so are we thinking globally, or, I mean, eventually, I know we have budget concerns, but can we just get some information on what other districts are doing to include sort of everybody our kids come in contact with?
We'll include that information as well.
How much, so Safe Schools is kind of the training I'm aware of, so how many folks do we have that have that sort of Safe Schools training? And I would imagine some guidance counselors and some student family advocates.
Yeah, I'm not aware exactly. We did, we try to provide opportunities for training. But I would say the Safe Zone model is primarily used, at least the training that I went through at the university level. We'd been in some preliminary discussions with how we could incorporate a K-12 model. We're still working through what that would look like, and also time. And so, I mean, we wanted to at least wait for the recommendations in the task force. I was a part of those as much as I could be. And so I was hearing some of these things and trying to mindfully plan as far as what that would look like. But there's still some conversations we need to have as far as what that training would look like, who's currently trained. I would say a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I did send an email out to individuals that would be interested in some type of training in relation to this issue, and had overwhelming support. So right now, a lot of those people hopefully haven't retired or left, but they're at Bay right now that are interested in helping our students in this way.
Great.
Other comments, questions? Sounds like we've got some work session activity in front of us. Do some road mapping, see what we can, get in a plan. And once we get that kind of plan, roadmap, the visibility piece becomes easier. We can talk about the things that we're doing and get that kind of engagement around it. So thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Very, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a transportation update, and I believe that's Joan. It was a long walk from the back of the room.
All right, thank you for your time this evening. And this is my first time in front of the new board as well. I'm Joan Vandenberg. I'm the Youth and Family Development Coordinator for the district. And I've been charged with talking to you tonight about secondary transportation. So, what is this for, Kingsley? Oh, okay. Technology. So, so just to give you a little bit of context, in 2016, the district board of directors made a very bold move and made a change to change our discretionary busing into attendance support busing. And so at that time, there were about 1,500 elementary students on discretionary busing in all different kinds of neighborhoods. Some were developed because of safety, others because of the neighborhoods they were living in, and it was just kind of all over the place. And so the board, kind of in response to Alexander opening, said that we needed to take socioeconomic factors into consideration when busing students. And so at that time, we formed a committee, and we looked at the discretionary bus routes that we had, and we made a determination on which routes should be maintained because they had high levels of kids in poverty and transportation barriers, and those that the parents probably had the resources to get there themselves. And the ultimate goal is to increase attendance and the academic achievement of our kids. And it's kind of in the spirit of the resource allocation model that you all have worked so hard on. So transportation is, it's a very expensive issue. And for our kids in poverty, it's a very expensive issue for their families as well. And so there's not really easy solutions to this one. But we're doing our best. So what we did for the secondary attendance support busing was kind of the same process that we did for the elementaries. We took a look at the current maps that David Duty had put together back in 2015-16. We also looked at some data from Guide K-12. We looked at some attendance data, and then we also just gathered observations from our student family advocates and the deans in the schools. So in terms of these are the three areas that came up as high priorities. So in Southeast Iowa City, this is the area on the other side of Highway 6. And right now, that is our largest number of kids getting bused at the secondary level. So we currently have 97 students bused to Southeast. And I just want to note that when the dean or the assistant principal looked at their data, they don't have any kids on their chronic absence list that live in that area. So in the same neighborhood, we have kids who are going to City High, and only 6 kids from that area are bused to City. And I would say the story at City is quite a bit different. There is a East Side Loop bus that kids ride, but that sometimes presents challenges just with the schedule because sometimes the East Side Loop doesn't quite coincide with the start of the school day. And also just paying for it. The bus passes, we distribute them, they are a little thin, and I would say that a lot of staff personally give a lot of money out of their own pocket for kids to get on the bus. So that's kind of the story in Southeast Iowa City. In North Liberty, we have Liberty, and very few kids in North Liberty are bused. It's most, we have the busing from Boston Way, and we have a few pay to ride. But there are, probably most of the kids in North Liberty aren't. And so in working with the dean and the student family advocate there, we identified 6 housing projects in North Liberty that receive Section 8 or have some kind of subsidy that are 2.5 to 3 miles from Liberty. And right now, they're having a hard time getting to school. Particularly, there's a group of 13 kids that have pretty significant attendance issues. So we're concerned about that. And then there's a little smaller pocket of kids who currently receive some discretionary busing to North Central that we want to maintain at some level, either pay to ride or something. So that's an area of need that we've identified. And I should add that in North Liberty, there is no public transportation. So unlike Iowa City and Coralville, we have that. West High has probably the least issue because they have so many kids who have mandatory busing. And so we have a small pocket in Coralville that the kids have public access, but they have to go to Coralville and down to Old Capitol Mall and then to West High. So it's a very long bus ride and not very realistic. And then they also have a very small pocket of kids on Riverside Drive, kind of down at the end of Benton. So those are kind of the prior areas that we identified for the secondary schools. And so then kind of our proposal, we don't even want to have discretionary busing. I think we just want to call it attendance support busing. And so, and I should note, there were 1,500 kids at the elementary level where we were considering this. At the high school level and junior high level, we're talking about 135. So it's a much smaller N at the secondary level. But for the kids who are currently getting that in Southeast Iowa City, we definitely want to maintain that because that's the brunt of the kids and that's really important. And then we also want to increase school bus options for the North Liberty students living in those affordable housing units, those 76 kids. And I should add, there's 76 kids that live in that area and 55 of them, or about 75%, are on free and reduced lunch. So we want to look at what options do we have for them, and we think pay to ride could be an option for them, but sometimes pay to ride has some challenges because it's when you apply for it and the availability of seats on the bus can be prohibitive in getting kids on that. So we want to explore it, but keep our eyes towards, is that going to do it, or we need to look at something different. And then also the third item is we really would just like to suggest that perhaps at one of the upcoming joint entities meeting that we have conversations with our local city councils, because I think there may be some creative solutions that we could do for public transportation. Some of them might be as simple as changing the bus route so the East Side Loop gets to City High on time, or on time for our classes, or could we do a West Side Loop where the kids in Coralville and other adult members don't have to go all the way downtown Iowa City to get to the West Side, which seems like would be helpful to a number of people. And then is there some cost share that we could do? Cost share with the city of Iowa City or city of North Liberty, because like I said, this is a very expensive, endeavor. So that's attendance support busing. And then I just very briefly also wanted to talk with you. And the runner is supposed to be a word cloud with all the extracurricular activities listed, but it just looks dopey. So anyway, that's what that's supposed to be. So activity transportation, this is for the students who live at Kirkwood attendance area and Alexander attendance area that are going to Northwest and West and to North Central and Liberty. And so last year the board allocated in June about $200,000 to provide activity buses for kids to be able to participate in extracurricular activities. And we had a slow start. We started right out of the gates in July, and we did some piloting with our summer program. And business was a little slow. We probably had a handful of kids that participated in our summer program using that bus. So then in the fall, we did several outreach activities, including personal visits and phone calls home, and we still had a pretty low response. So we went to Yellow Cab. And then there was some concern about, do kids feel a stigma, riding a cab to school? So then we did pilot a bus to Liberty for about 3 weeks for the beginning of this winter sports season. And again, we maybe had about 10 kids participating. So just from a cost-effective standpoint, when we run a bus in the morning, in the afternoon, it's about $1,000 a week versus a cab is, a fraction of that. So just our recommendations on it. And so year to date, we've spent roughly $10,000. And every month, I'm happy to say the bill gets bigger, which usually Craig doesn't like to hear me say I like it when bills get bigger, but I think it shows that we're getting the word out. Because I think we talked about the challenges of this project. It takes a while for people to know that this is a resource that's available. And just the time, we're thinking it's a great opportunity now that we're transitioning sixth graders to 7th and 8th graders to 9th grade, that we can talk about this resource. We also would like to pilot a junior high bus in the spring, because I think what I've learned from other districts is high school tends not to be as popular as junior high for busing, because high school kids tend to like to ride the bus in the first place. They have more friends. So we thought we would have either North Central or Northwest pilot that. And then also we talked a little bit about the other challenges with kids participating in activities, and we actually did a survey in, I think it was October, and I think it was 26% of the kids said that transportation was a factor, but almost as high was they have other responsibilities after school, or they have, or they just weren't interested in what was offered after school. So it's, it isn't just provide a bus and people are going to, they're going to ride it and participate. So I think, that's one of the challenges that we're facing. And then I think the other communication issue that we have with this is it gets kind of awkward, like, oh, we can, you could go out for basketball, you could ride a bus, and then a kid who maybe lives at Pheasant Ridge wants to go to Northwest. Oh, but that's just for the kids who live in the Alexander Tenants area. That's not for the kid who lives at Pheasant Ridge or at Hills. And so you can't do the same blast out to everybody because other kids who have transportation barriers aren't a part of that mix. So I'm trying to be quick because you've got a lot of work ahead of you and a lot of work behind you. So that is pretty much what I've got. Questions? Craig, is there anything you would like to add?
I just want to compliment Joan and the committee. I thought they came up with some pretty good recommendations here from my chair in the organization. I thought they exercised a lot of restraint for resource allocation, which is really good. But just want to remind the board that secondary, unlike elementary, we typically have more capacity on our buses, more open seats for pay to ride. And if our student family advocates, and Joan and I have talked about this, if we can educate our parents and make them aware of the time frame in which this application period is open and they can get an application in, we can almost guarantee that they'll get routed. And because of the way that the board has set that up to waive fees for those who qualify, it's not a financial hardship in that case. And so it's just a matter of taking advantage of what we really have available already and not having to layer additional things upon that. And so I thought the committee did a really good job of working through those, and it's a good balanced approach. The pilot for the junior high, of course, track season's coming up and a lot of participation and things like that. Our buses go crazy in the spring with just going all over the place, and so this may have an opportunity to really support students who find that to be a barrier. So, being a part of the committee, I thought the outcome was just kind of where it really needed to be. So,
Joan, I just want to say thank you again for this report, and I just had a couple comments. One, I've said a bunch of times at this table, but we did set the boundaries for what they are, and so I appreciate you guys following our ask that you provide the transportation like we have, regardless of cost. The second thing was actually something that Joan reminded me of at Share Your School Day at Southeast, and I looked it up again just to go back and make sure it was noted. And at the last time we discussed this in March of last year, we talked about reasons that it's brought up that maybe not have an interest in the sport or whatever's happening. And one of the areas that I asked at the time to look into the cost of was the cost of a junior high soccer program. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's been done yet, or if it has, I haven't heard back. So I just want to put that back out there, and I'll follow up with Steve and Matt since they're both not here, because I think soccer is one of those things that kids would be interested in at the junior high level that we're missing out right now.
And when we did a survey last year, overwhelmingly, it was soccer, 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 soccer. And I think what's really cool is that it's so, it appeals to many of our diverse students as well. So, it's especially our immigrant students, it's really important to them. So I think it would be a huge hit.
Joan, I just want to thank you for this report. And I went back and looked at the questions that I asked when we discussed this a few months ago, and you hit all of them. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, good.
Really appreciate the work. And I have to say that of all the things that we've done since I've been on the board, one of the things I am the most proud of is the switch to attendance support busing. And I hear over and over again from staff what a difference that makes. Just this morning I heard from a student family advocate that they have a kid who had no problems when he lived in an area with attendance support busing, and then he moved a few blocks over, and now they're having trouble.
Right.
So I just think it's great, and I look forward to adding that to the secondary level. And I would say probably what we need to do is put it on a work session agenda and figure out what the costs are. I'm guessing Craig will want to delve into that. You said there wouldn't be a great big cost for the pay-to-ride students, but if that's the case for all of the routes, if all the areas you suggested would fall into that, for example, like City might not, because I don't know that they're over 3 miles. So anyway, I think that would be good for us to discuss further. And the other thing I want to say is we had talked before about the reasons that kids aren't participating, and I really appreciate the chart that you did there. Regarding that. And one thing that's been on my mind, and I know this is an elementary issue, but when I go to a band concert, there's not very much diversity on the stage. And so I spoke with one of our elementary band instructors about that, and he told me that 100% of the reason kids aren't participating that have socioeconomic barriers is transportation. And he said that they will participate in taking lessons at school, but they just can't keep up. Because they can't participate in the after-school band and orchestra by the time they hit 7th grade, they are behind the other students and they drop out. So I'm wondering if that's another thing we could look at. That would be with the elementary committee, but if we could look at some support for activity busing for band and orchestra at the 5th and 6th grade level.
And that's something, too, that the committee talked about, is that having an activity bus, I think particularly for music at the high school level, is too late, because many parents struggle to get their kids from an elementary to a junior high or high school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you don't have that flexibility, or in my case, a neighbor with a car that's willing to take my kid too, it makes it really challenging. And so when we did our outreach efforts, there were no kids from the Alexander attendance area in West High's band, and there were, I think, 4 in the Kirkwood attendance area going to Liberty. So this kind of speaks to how, that opportunity is, at an earlier level, needs to be an intervention there.
So I'm wondering, would the rest of the board support the elementary committee, which I know is going to meet here in a few weeks, looking at that? Activity busing for 5th and 6th graders? Might even just be like a van. I'm not sure that it would be a bus.
Right. Sure. I'll make a note.
How much more would it cost to pilot a bus at both junior highs? Because I'm wondering, you might not get, the data from North Central might not be similar to what's going on at Northwest.
Well, I don't know exactly how long track season and spring sports are. It's about 1,000 a week. Okay. So if it's, it would be 6 weeks. I don't know.
Probably.
Is that Jane's nodding her head? So it would be 6,000 or 12,000.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Comments or questions? Thank you, Joan.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, AT&T Wireless Services Amendment. I know this is an action item. Do we need to just have a quick update on this topic?
Yeah, the action item is just to set the hearing date for next board meeting, and I'll entertain any questions you may have.
I move that we set the hearing date in consideration of the wireless communications tower lease for February 27th, 2018 at 6 p.m. as per the attached resolution.
Second.
Further discussion? If not, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. District Quarterly Financial Report. Is this Leslie?
Yes.
Thank you.
The report is provided in the packet. Just a couple of things to note. The year is progressing pretty much as we planned from the first quarter, and so that's good news, but we continue to monitor that on a regular basis. Couple things for your attention is page 6. You'll notice that the line is in there for the GO bonds as a separate Fund 31 now, with the revenue of $62 million popping in there from the sale and the funds received in December. And so that's the $58.9 million plus the premium. If you recall that discussion that we received, that's how we get to $62 million. So we really did only borrow the $58.9. So, and then as you can see, there's some expenditures starting in that fund for some of the projects as we're going forward that passed because of that resolution. The next thing would be on page 10, the unspent balance calculation. That's always probably the primary financial document that Craig and I look at and ponder over on a regular basis. If you look at fiscal years 19 and beyond, there's a number of assumptions built into those, starting with the 1% growth for next year. Craig will go into more detail on that with the budget assumptions in the presentation at the February 27th meeting, but it introduces you to that and how it builds out through the next couple years. Line 54 on that document, and I know the lines are small and a little hard to read, is a new line that we've added to this document for the first time, and it's a break-even point. You know, if you were a for-profit organization, you'd always want to have a positive number there, and so we're just trying to show in each year as we project out the impact on our unspent balance from each one of those years. And you can see that 18 is a small deficit, and the next couple years are a couple difficult years. And we anticipated that because of the Liberty and not being as efficient as our other high schools when you first bring on a facility like that. And so, you know, as you see these numbers with the base assumptions we have right now, you've heard lots of information tonight about and discussions about adding things. So it's going to be a real balancing of the priorities from you, and we bring this to your attention so that you're cognizant of that as you think about those programs and things that would benefit all of the kids across the district. You know, as we all know, everything costs money, and so that's what we just want you to be aware of that. The other thing is in your packet for the first time, we've provided a series of spreadsheets on the projects, primarily from the GO bonds. It's the first time we put those together. These are the documents that we use internally to monitor the cash flow and the progress of those projects as we move forward. And so 6 or 8 pages there. We'll continue to give you those on a quarterly basis. If you see something there that you say, can we have more information, or can we change the format of these somehow? We'll take a look at that. But right now we just pulled these off our cash flow model. We think there's quite a bit of information. Starts with the budget, starts with the contractor and the architect that are involved, when things are approved, when change orders are, as well as the monthly expenditures in each project. So we thought it was a good way to provide that information to you on a regular basis.
Thank you for that.
My only question is, and I don't know, I'll just get to it. The dropout funding, I've been hearing that there's some changes, some programming changes or decisions that have been made, and Matt isn't here, but I heard particularly about the junior high prep program. Is that in this fiscal year because we have run out of money, or is that something that is for the next year's budget?
It's actually kind of a combination of both, because the summer program would, in most of those programs, would go from someplace in the middle of June to the middle or latter part of July, so it would cross over the fiscal year. So some of the funding would come from the current year dropout prevention, and some would be from allocation for next year. So it's looking at maintaining the existing programs and that balance.
So is that accurate, that there has been a change to that, the junior high prep program?
I have to talk to the
Yep.
curriculum.
You need to talk
Sure.
to the curriculum side.
That's this side over here. Yes, looking at the budget for next year and looking at really the amount of services that we added, mainly due to Liberty, but to some other services that we added too, we anticipate being over budget if we were to continue with all the services that we currently offer. So we've had to make some decisions about cutting some of those services.
Other comments, questions?
I know it's the budget, it just after the explosion we had at Northwest, you know, and other places this year, real consistent feedback was kids who went through those programs weren't really having problems and missing out that. And so I don't know if there's a way to prioritize the type of kids that we make sure to get in those programs, because it's, I mean, that was feedback we heard, that if you participated in a sort of get ready for junior high program, it was pretty smooth sailing. And the kids who didn't were the ones who were really struggling a lot more in a lot of different ways. And so, you know, hopefully we're being mindful of that.
Okay. If no further questions, thank you, Leslie. Appreciate the report. Moving on to Appendix 9, Dwayne.
Thank you. I might add that Ann Langenfeld, the principal at Lincoln Elementary, is here to help answer questions should we have any, so she was willing to do that and appreciate it. We have 8 projects with 13 approvals, and the first one is Lincoln Elementary, the addition and renovation. It's a step forward design development, and I would add that particular drawing is in your administrative content area of your folders for the board. And we did bring the schematic design presentation with us. If you have questions and you want to revisit that, we do have that with us.
Hey, Dwayne?
Yes, sir.
Just because the link's not working, do you have that?
I don't have it with me. Kim, can you get to it, the administrative content?
Yeah, that's the link that's not
Michelle
working.
uploaded, it doesn't open, it shows it
Can
here.
you log in through board docs? Kingsley can log in
It
through.
won't open. It's a bad file.
It's
You
a
open it up and it says it.
Malformed escape
malformed.
sequence. So,
Nice.
Adam, maybe
Well, I
you
tell you
know,
what, why don't we just, Kingsley can load up the schematic design, so if we have questions, I can show you on that particular drawing, if you have a question. What you have in your bold folder, when you can get to it, is the actual drawings for design development. There's like 100 pages of stuff there. You won't want to see it all anyway, but I put it there just in case you wanted to reference it, okay? Okay, so the original, you may recall, and a little history lesson is important here. You may recall, some of you were on the board, that's why we thought we'd revisit some of this. The original plan called for a gymnasium and a classroom and/or cafeteria addition on the south end of that building. And that would have resulted in a significant loss of the hard surface playground and the green space itself, or the soft space. And we were forced to then possibly look at buying some adjacent properties to make up for that loss in playground. Lincoln's probably our second or third smallest school site in the city. And a host of other issues with busing and parent drop-off. Right now, the streets are being used for bus drop-off and for parent drop-off. There's no actual off-site space to do that. So we explored some other possibilities. We presented a schematic design in August, which at least 4 of you weren't here, I guess. 3 of you, yeah, 4 of you. And that preserved the playgrounds, hard and soft. It improved AD access by providing an elevator and access to a parking lot that's on the lower level. And it provided a bus drop-off and a parent drop-off on the site as opposed to on the street. It provided a separate preschool and kindergarten drop-off. And it also required that we look at revising the budget because it was significantly different than what was adequate, what was prepared for a year ago. So our design team, then another issue was our design team discovered a critical slope issue with the east side of the building, which is where we proposed the addition be placed. And there's an ordinance in the city that requires that we don't develop what we call critical slopes. In other words, if it's a steep bank, they prefer not to develop it. They prefer not to have erosion. There's been some cases in past history of Iowa City where that was done, and it's a proactive approach, and I have absolutely no problem with it. We discovered it. We brought it to the city's attention, the district design team, but then we also discovered that it was a man-made critical slope, that the reason it was steep is because back in the 70s, we did a parking lot addition on the lower level at Lincoln, and that created the steep bank. So working with city staff, we took it to the city P&Z first, and then the city council. We got overwhelming support for the project from both bodies. I don't think there was a negative vote between the two. So they were both very supportive of that project. We also took it to Lincoln staff several times, 3, 4 maybe, at least. We took it to a Lincoln PTO meeting. We met with the Manville Heights neighbors twice, and city engineering planning staff in addition to PNC and city council. The conclusion of all those meetings was that it really was the right thing to do, and that we should just keep pushing it forward because it made Lincoln Elementary a viable elementary school. It really lacks some of the key elements that larger schools have. It has a really poor situation with the current cafeteria and gymnasium on a lower level. You have many steps to get to it. The initial schematic plan would have preschool at one end, kindergarten at the other, and it didn't solve some of the other issues. So the conclusion was we should just keep pursuing it and work with the budget issues and come back to you when we could present a plan. So the original, and just to review, the original Lincoln budget was set in early 2017 at $5.8 million. Since that time, we've actually saved $3.5 million in the sale of the bonds and the general obligations. So that freed up $3.5 million of the $190 million. We've also projected, which we don't have yet, but a projection above that for another $5 million in savings due to inflation not spent due to the accelerated plan, which we've only done part of. So that's kind of an iffy thing still, but the $3.5 million is real. We have that in hand. So we're proposing that the budget be increased to $8,078,000. That includes the original $5,828,000. The bond cost savings of $1.5 million, which is not all of the 3.5, just part of it, but that's actual dollars. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did at Coralville Central. At Coralville Central, we had some of the same issues, but we took the windows, we took the roofing, we took some of the hard surface areas and did those with Pebble life cycle dollars. If we were to keep that building there, those are things that we would have spent anyway. So that adds up to about $750,000. Those three items combined make the proposed $8 million budget. The current construction cost estimates are, I have two different numbers here for you. One is $7,652,000, and that was a number provided to us by our professional estimating service. Usually pretty good. They've done a good job for us in past projects. We've hit the number. I also did a ballpark based on historical costs, and there's 28,000 feet of renovated space at about $125 a foot, which comes to $3.5 million, and 15,900 square feet of new space at $225 a foot, which is another $3,580,000. Those combined come to $7,079,000. I really feel comfortable that this number is going to be between 7.1 and 7.6. It's somewhere in between. We still have more details to go. Again, the original budget, as I proposed to you, would be $8 million, but that reserves money for a contingency and then to pay the design team as well. So we can't spend it all. So that's how we split that budget up. So I can move on to these other items if you like, President Godwin, or we can answer questions in this particular project.
First questions on Lincoln.
Move on.
So we're approving the schematic design tonight?
No, you're approving design development, which was in your packet. Apparently you can't bring it
Yeah,
up.
exactly, yeah.
It's pretty much just more details added to that schematic design. If you want to see it, we can pull it up real quick.
It's okay, I just was curious if that's what we're doing tonight.
Design development, which is step 2. You still have another step, approval step for construction documents. This is not the last time you're going to approve it.
Thank you.
Or we talk about it. Move on? Okay. Longfellow Elementary School, we have a step 8 change request, which is actually a credit of $26,473. Part of that is a deletion of IT cabling that we do through our IT department and for independent contractors, but that saved us $51,700. But then we had some unforeseen changes in HVAC, electrical, some hardware, and some structural issues. At Longfellow, we're finding, in an old building, you're going to find things you weren't counting on. So that added back 74, and we had a code change. So that request is actually to save us $26,400. The next one is roof management bid package 1. It's City, which is City, West, Wood, Kirkwood, and Truck. Excuse me. And that's for substantial completion. The project's done, punch list items are done. That will release a retainage of $6,191 and some cents, and also step 10, which is a project acceptance. The next project is roof management bid package 2, West High softball and football press boxes. You may recall we've gotten into those projects and found some areas that were rotten. We've replaced siding, we've replaced plywood, we replaced framing, a lot of things there that just, in the windows, it was just due to the windows not being adequate. A lot of moisture got into those buildings. This particular change is to remove some unneeded hardware and to do some additional painting, some additional siding, and installation of some seals around the windows and doors to keep the moisture and air out. The next project is Safety and Security Phase 6B, which is City High, and that's a Step 9 substantial completion. I think the punch list is all but completed. Really close to recommend you approve the project, and that retainage would be $82,742, which is about 5% of the project. And typically, just for your knowledge, when we get to this point, it allows us to release it, but we don't always release the whole thing. I'll actually take a look, before I authorize it, take a look at what's left on the punch list, and we double the value of that and hold that back until the project is actually completed. So if we decide there's $10,000 worth of work, we'll hold back 20 and only release the 62. Make sense? That's how we do that. West High renovations phase 1, we have a step 8 change request for $38,838. And that part of that is code requiring some additional electrical hold door open devices for $2,800. And then there's some unforeseen demolition, again, when we started demolishing the old kitchen. And the out in the back where the utilities are, that there is just I can't tell you how many electrical, plumbing, and gas lines and things like that there are in that back part of that dock area and building. But I think we've gotten on top of most of them. By the way, if you haven't been by West High, the big concrete precast panels for the gym started going up yesterday and today, and they've got a pretty good handle on it, so you can really see the mass of that addition going up there. Also at West High Phase 2, asbestos abatement, it's a pretty easy design process, so we collapse the design process. We don't go through schematic design and design development and construction. We pretty much just combine them all in one because it's really simple and straightforward. There's asbestos there, get rid of it, so that's why there's so many there. There's step 3, 4, and 5, and the 6 was a request for the public hearing, which was on the consent you already approved. And I might mention that we're anticipating that the asbestos abatement alone for phase 2 at West High is going to be between $450,000 and $500,000. We don't use bond money. We don't use sales tax. We use general fund money. And then we're reimbursed or actually allocated out of our flexible spending. You can explain that better than I, Craig, how we do that.
Yeah, we bring you, well, it was at our last meeting where we had the asbestos for this last year. The number will just get larger next year because of West. And it's a routine procedure through the School Budget Review Committee. Yeah. And it's just a great way to help recover those funds where we don't have to spend other resources.
The last project this evening is West High Phase 2 renovation project. And unfortunately, you can't get into your administrative content, but there was a great picture when you can get. That does come up. Well, that does come up? For me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So the actual plan, let me talk a little bit about what's being done in Phase 2. There's no additions planned in Phase 2. We're doing HVAC upgrades, we're doing ventilation, we're doing geothermal, we're doing electrical upgrades, lighting, new fixtures, windows. We have some structural issues, believe it or not, at West High. That building's 50 years old, and there's some structural issues that we need to resolve. We're doing ceilings, floorings, and finishes. The thing you're going to notice the most about that plan, so we didn't bring you the plan because it doesn't change. The elevation changes, however, and that's the picture that you have in your folder. If you pull that up, it shows West High the way it is today and the way West High may look 3 or 4 years from now. So that's the really significant thing about this project. We're asking that you approve schematic and design development. They've been moving right along with the design work. Again, it's pretty straightforward. It's mostly mechanical work with no modifications in the floor plan to speak of. So we're asking you to do those both tonight, again, in a collapsed design process to save time. if you're interested in the plans, we do have them at the physical plant. We do have Tim Ferrer here tonight from Shive Hattery, who could answer any specific questions you might have. And the project budget is $22,471,951, but again, that includes design fees, it includes a 5% construction contingency, it includes furniture, fixtures, and equipment, things like that. And the recent estimate for this work is $18,089,000, so it's well within our budget. Feeling pretty good about it. And with that, I'd answer any questions you might have.
I'm still stuck on Lincoln.
Okay.
And the benefits are there. I mean, I appreciate the design work and all the thought process. I'm concerned about the budget, and I couldn't quite follow all the puts and gives and gets you were describing, Dwayne, and so I just wasn't quite keeping up with that. And it sounds like you found a path to cover what is over what the original budget estimate was. But, things happen. There's no slack in Lincoln now, the way it's being designed and what the estimates are. And that concerns me a little bit. And, you just mentioned Longfellow, old buildings, stuff comes up. Lincoln's not as old as Longfellow, but it's an older building, and, stuff might come up when you start working on it, and you've got no slack. And I think that's what's nagging at the back of my head here. And I would urge, and if we approve this, the project design development phase, I would take every step to find a way to bring this budget back down to what we had originally proposed, and not try to. It just feels like we're cobbling together PEPL here and bonds, interest savings there, and ways to come up with the dollar amount, but there's no slack. So I'm worried about that.
I couldn't agree with you more. We've worked really hard the last 3 or 4 months doing that. I've been really critical of the design work, and they come to me every step of the way and show me what they're doing. We've made a lot of modifications to cut back. We cut back to the quantity of the brick, for example, and we went to a colored metal. Then we went to a monochrome metal because we could save some more, and things like that. So we've done that. I really think we're being consistent with what the community needs and wants for that building. I don't think it's outrageous by any means. These are real dollars we're talking about, and you should know that there are 2 contingencies built into this. One's built into the estimate. I have a 3 to 4% estimate contingency within the estimate itself, and then I have another 5% estimate or contingency pulled aside to deal with construction changes. So we do take that and look at that very carefully. The best course of action, I felt, was to look at life cycle projects, and that's the way to make it whole. This building won't be whole unless we actually do this. And I maybe need to hear from Ian, but I think we're really doing what the community wants us to do. And Craig can speak more to the $1.5 million. You don't have to take my word for it, but it's there, it exists. You have anything you want to add to that?
After all the community input and staff input, this will make it a viable elementary school for the future, for generations. Right now, we have addition upon addition upon addition that really makes for a very difficult school to have functions in. This would provide it so it could be year-round use for the community too. And the gym would provide a storm shelter for us, which right now we have to go outside to go into a lower storage. And so I think we've worked really hard. Like even today I had a phone call about our lock sets, our intruder lock sets that can be reused to save funds too. So they are looking at all ways to conserve. And we don't have any flashy bells and whistles. This is a very practical, functional building that's being designed.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable including that in the, okay. I move that we approve the Appendix 9 requests as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. Next up, we've got a different agenda item, this potential board hearings item. This is a consideration. We've been asked by two families in different districts to have their students enroll in ICCSD. These students have been expelled from their home districts, and they have not yet completed their action plan to be reinstated. There are a couple options the board can take. One, we can deny the request to have this hearing because the students have not completed their action plan to go back into their schools. Or we could choose to proceed with the hearing, and we'd need to do some extra work to prepare the board to have that hearing. I think there's some information attached to the board item, previous case with some sort of recommendations, et cetera, about how boards might conduct themselves in these situations. There's one statement, the decision states, we also believe that a board in that position is well advised to also seek permission from the board that expelled the student. Local school boards in Iowa should recognize and honor the authority of another board to discipline its students. As a matter of courtesy and good faith, no school board should take action that effectively negates an expulsion decision reached by another board. Before us, we need to decide whether we want to hear this or deny the request for a hearing. Comments or questions?
So if we have a hearing with the family?
It would be, I think there would be a request for a closed session. We would be, in essence, ruling on the student's expulsion and deciding whether we would want to have that student come to our school district before they completed the action plan that the original district had put in place for them.
And in that hearing, would we hear from the district?
I think we'd get information from the district and the families. They would both be coming. We'd have to engage with the district, understand the background, then the families would come into a closed session to present their cases.
My understanding is we did receive information from the district and their reasons for that.
Okay. My humble opinion is I don't know that we would want to be in the position of ruling on another district's position on an expulsion. I think that sets a bad precedent, and that's my opinion, but I welcome the thoughts of other board members.
So how often does this happen?
Never.
In the state?
This is the first time.
The first time ever.
That we've got two at once, apparently, is just, yeah.
From different districts?
Yep. One student in Illinois and then another student in Iowa, I believe.
Yeah, one is from out of state and one is a neighboring district.
My concern in reading this, that the student didn't follow through in what their own district set forward, and the liability that may present without knowing the background of why that student was expelled from that school district. I would be of the position, if we were to take a vote on that, not to consider a hearing, just because we're opening ourselves up to, I think, a can of worms of just going down that path, especially with someone that couldn't follow through with their home district and looking for sort of a recourse with ours.
Yeah.
I think the thing that maybe all of us might be internally struggling with is that you want to provide education for the students. But I would agree with what Janet and Ruthina has said so far.
I guess when I read it and I understand all that, I just would like more information before I'd even decide to, I mean, a little bit of background, a little bit of context about, not to say that I want to go get that at a hearing. I just like to have that, I'd like to have it before I would make a decision. It's just pretty vague, and I don't know what the district set up, and I don't know anything.
I can give you a little context.
Okay.
One is looking at a weapons violation and one is a drug violation. During the expulsion, though, oftentimes districts do offer alternative programming for students. So, I know in one district they are providing an alternative form of education for a student. On the second one, I'm not sure of that right now, but oftentimes that's a part of that expulsion.
And so do we know if the district that is offering it, is the student participating in that?
At the time that I talked to them 3 weeks ago, the family had not enrolled.
Okay. I also would support taking no action.
Is there a motion to deny the request?
I move that we deny the request of holding a hearing.
Second.
Any further discussion? Kim, we're ready to vote?
Just a second here.
Just a point of clarification, and maybe Craig, do we need a motion for this if we're going to take no action? We do, okay.
We need to respond to the parents involved.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Malone, Eystone, and Hemingway voting yea and Director Clausen voting nay.
Thank you. Agenda setting. I'm going to note, we don't have anything listed here, but I just wanted to note for the good of the cause, we have an education committee on the 20th at Trek. We're also going to be scheduling on the 20th a closed session around the superintendent evaluation. We actually pushed that topic out. We were supposed to talk about that today, but we chose to have the exempt session on negotiations instead, so we'll be looking to schedule that on the 20th. On the 27th, we have the superintendent evaluation where we present the evaluation to the superintendent. We have another exempt session on negotiations, which we mentioned earlier. In terms of the actual board meeting, topics on deck, the hearing on AT&T, which we just scheduled, consent agenda. We'll have an equity committee update on objective 3, which is the discipline disparities. We believe we'll be ready for the Christine Grant boundary vote, but we have a work session on that at the conclusion of this meeting. We'll also be talking about the certified budget. We'll be getting an update on special ed in terms of the seclusion and restraint task force, timeout rooms, University of Iowa Behavior and Mental Health Partnership, and DDSDP for special education. Obviously, Appendix 9. I believe, Paul, we're going to have some P&G items.
Yeah, Appendix 2 and the 600 policies.
Okay, so those will be part of the agenda as well, and those will be actions.
Yep.
Anything else for the 27th?
Well, we had a lot of speakers talking about the calendar issues, although we voted on the calendar not too long ago. I don't know if that's something we would place on a work session discussion or something to revisit that topic, since we had so many speakers speaking on it tonight.
Let's add that to our list of work session topics, and as we play out sort of our agendas and work session agendas for the rest of the school year, that we can put that on our list to make sure that we cover that. Other agenda items for the 27th. It's another packed night. Hearing none.
Are you talking about the work session?
Not yet. I was just moving to the work session. So on the work session, we have another attendance area development discussion. We'll be getting a presentation from the district regarding the implementation of the agricultural program. And that's what we've got slated for work session on the 27th. Other topics?
I would like us to add the secondary transportation recommendations of the committee. And I would like us to discuss what, if any, action we'd like to take on that, particularly in regards to the secondary discretionary busing.
Is there anything we need in addition from administration to prepare for that?
I think if we were going to switch to attendance support busing, we might need some information from Craig regarding any places where kids couldn't pick up a pay-to-ride bus. The question would be, would there be any incremental cost to them? by switching to attendance support busing.
Right, you're putting that in a, I can't answer that question because number one, I don't know who the students are, and number two, I don't know what my routes are next year, okay? What I can tell you is that if we go through and we communicate with the parents and we get their applications, we do a very good job of getting them scheduled and getting them routed, okay? But I can't even begin to quantify that for you.
So I guess the question would be, is there anything that you would want us to review as part of that discussion?
I think the recommendations are pretty clear. There's really not a lot of incremental costs involved with the attendance support busing as it relates to the secondary at this point in time. So
okay.
I think you're in pretty good shape, really.
Okay, so then just a discussion of what we want to do with that. And then, yeah, we would place it on the next meeting agenda for action. And then, of course, we talked about the LGBTQ issues, and I don't know if this work session is enough time. Kingsley, would you like a little more time than that?
Sorry, I put my computer down.
And the 27th is probably all going to be pretty full, but so maybe.
Yeah.
But I do want to make sure that we follow up on the presentation tonight and the recommendations that were noted and start understanding what that roadmap looks like.
I guess I'd just prefer to dedicate more time to that and
Yeah.
not have it on a packed night, because there's no rush and no time.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it's not an urgent thing, but it's not something that's going to happen. I think we can wait. I'd dedicate some time to it.
Yeah, that's good. So future, March maybe, or
March.
April?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's on the 20th Ed Committee agenda? Because it's not there.
It's
not listed in here.
It isn't? Homeschool assistance and track.
In a track program update.
Yep.
Okay.
Track will just give us let us, say what's going on there, and then homeschool assistance. And hopefully those will be, we'll keep that, we're going to try to keep that to an hour, because then we want to dedicate time to this closed session. But I think it'd be nice, one, to get to Trek, and two, to hear about these programs.
Yeah. Other agenda items? Hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
I had to, we couldn't.
I was aware.
Oh, my goodness.